very good morning to you, by the way. Morning Glory with me, Mike Graham.
Just some breaking news for you coming out of Liverpool Crown Court.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the programme. Welcome to the home of common sense.
Loads to talk about, I promise you that. Loads and loads and loads.
Yes, it's me again, your genial host, Kevin O'Sullivan.
How realistic do you think a ceasefire is this week?
There's a very good chance that we'll have a settlement, an agreement of some kind.
We basically have two countries that are
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6. It is Friday, the 3rd of October. A sombre show this morning, obviously, because of what happened yesterday up in Manchester. A man who was actually called Jihad took a knife out of his pocket, drove a car towards a synagogue in Manchester on the very holiest day of the Jewish year. It is Yom Kippur, and started stabbing people. Jihad al-Shami is his name. He was granted British citizenship in 2006. He could not reach the targets inside the synagogue in Manchester, thankfully, because he tried to get into the synagogue where he wanted to stab ever more people. The synagogue was packed with worshippers because it was, as we say, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. He was shot by armed police, and he was then thought to have been able to pull some kind of suicide vest or a bomb of some kind out of his pocket, and he was shot again. And the police, I have to say, did a fantastic job. Within 7 minutes, they had somehow neutralised this man. But the big question this morning, and the questions that will arise for the next few days, I would imagine, here in the UK, is how many more of these scumbags are there out there? How many more people who have been invited to this country by this government, who have been given solace, who have been given sanctuary, who have been given asylum in many cases, in this case been given citizenship in 2006 as a young child? How on earth is it possible that these people have become so radicalised that what they want to do is kill? What they want to do is murder. What they want to do is create mayhem. And what they want to do is to, in some ways, destroy the very essence of the business of life. They want to destroy the world that we live in. They want to destroy our world, even though they're living in it, at our invitation, for heaven's sake. Grant Shapps has talked about it this morning because his father-in-law was there at the time. He's talking about it as well. So Michael Goldstone, I should say, 79 years old. A rabbi was inside. There were loads and loads of worshippers. And thankfully, as I say, it could have been a lot worse, and the police were able to neutralise his character before he did too much harm. But he did murder 2 people, and unfortunately those families will never forget what happened on this day. And we'll be talking about all of it. 3 people have been arrested as well. Outside of him, he was killed, as I said, but 3 other people who obviously helped him with his attack on the synagogue have been arrested as well. And I think if the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, doesn't understand how serious this is, and I'm not sure that he does, we have got a massive problem on our hands. And also, as if that wasn't bad enough, last night in Manchester, in London, and elsewhere, there were several pro-Palestinian protests going on, which were allowed to go ahead in the wake of these murders, these terrorist murders. Quite extraordinary. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We'll be hearing from all of you this morning. But we've got a serious problem in this country, and if Keir Starmer doesn't realise it, then he has got no business being our Prime Minister. And that's what I'm going to say. Even Israel have blamed him for this culture of Jew hatred which is going on in Britain today in 2025. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Back after this. Welcome to Morning Glory, 6 minutes past 6. Charlie Rowley's here with me. Charlie, good to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. A bit sombre this morning, obviously, with the news on the front pages. Every single paper, of course, absolutely dominated by this. He was an Islamic terrorist, is what it says on the front page of the Daily Mail. The attacker named as a Briton, aged 35, of Syrian descent. 7 minutes of evil is what it says on the front page of The Sun, and they all use a picture of him lying face down, having been shot. And there was a video, which I'm not sure if you've seen, but many people have seen, which circulated fairly early yesterday, of the police doing a fantastic job of neutralising, because they worried that he was actually, after having been shot once and was sort of down on the ground, he started to look like he was going to get up, looked like he might have a bomb of some kind, and they shot him again. And they managed to neutralise him within 7 minutes of getting the call. So they deserve an awful lot of praise. But you have to say, how many more of these people are there out there? You know, because I wonder whether there's thousands of them.
Well, you're absolutely right. You know, again, the UK, the nation, has woken up to what has been yesterday a terrorist attack on a particular community who are celebrating their most holiest day of the year. Right. And an Islamic extremist, fundamentalist, has targeted, calculatedly, decidedly, and horrifically, a group of people who were going about their everyday prayers, or not even their everyday prayers, it was more of a special occasion, and decided to attack and commit an act of terror, killing 2 people. And you're right, if it wasn't for the bravery of the police and the response, who put their lives on the line,
and the speed they were to do it,
and that is a credit to those officers on the ground, goes without saying. But Sir Stephen Watson, who is the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police, we are absolutely right to criticise the police when they get it wrong, and they do on an awful lot of occasions. But he, in particular, has taken a no-nonsense approach to all kinds of things like crime and antisocial behaviour. But you know, overseeing what no officer wants to have to respond to, I'm sure, yesterday, and dealing with it in such swift time is obviously praise to them. But it's a reminder of the threat that the UK is under.
Absolutely right. And people will be asking questions this morning, and as the story kind of unfolds as to how this could have come about, it turns out that the sort of makeshift bomb and the suicide belt that he appeared to have wasn't really active, and so thankfully he wasn't able to set that off. But there's, as I say, an amazing piece of video in which you can see people just going, oh my God, like just literally watching it. I think we've got a little bit here, police confronting the Manchester synagogue attacker. Have a look.
Everybody else, get back! If you're not involved, move back! Get away! Somebody stay with casualties! Everybody else, he has a bomb! Go away!
He's got a bomb on him! He's got a bomb! Mate, he's got a... Lad, he's got a bomb on his jacket, mate!
Quite extraordinary. I mean, because now we live in that age, don't we, where everything is kind of recorded. Somebody's got a phone, so you see an awful lot more than you would otherwise normally not see. But, you know, it would appear that this guy, who's called Jihad al-Shami, he's 35 years of age, a British citizen of Syrian descent. It appears he came to this country when he was a child, they think around about 2006. He was given British citizenship. We don't know much about his parents. We don't know who else has been arrested. 3 other people have been arrested. But again, similar to the story of the Manchester Arena bombings, where those 2 brothers, the Abedi brothers, grew up in Manchester, came from Libya as children. Their parents were sort of fleeing the Gaddafi regime. They were supposedly, you know, anti-Gaddafi. They came here and suddenly radicalised into blowing up, you know, dozens and dozens of young women, young girls. And you just have to think to yourself, you know, this happened under Tony Blair's watch, right? This was 2006. I mean, how many more people did we let into this country who have what can only be described as, you know, hateful views towards our country?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's almost 20 years ago since this guy was given British citizenship. And over that period, you've got to ask yourself the question, what has gone wrong? What has happened? Why is it that someone who has come into this country, that has been given citizenship, albeit at a young age, but over that 20-year period, has grown up to hate in the UK, you know, the most tolerant, open, diverse, liberating, democratic nation that is an example to the rest of the world. It is beggars belief. And for too long, whether it's Islamist extremism within our communities, whether it's a grooming gangs of people who are criminals and rapists. For too long, the UK public, I feel, have been battered into not being able to speak out or not being able to say, hang about, that's not the way that we do things in the UK, or no, that isn't part of our culture, you need to integrate more. We've been told that we're far right and racist, if you dare mention anything like that. All the while, actors like this individual have been able to sit at home, no doubt, preach this hate and commit these vile acts. It's abhorrent, and you know, everybody has to look at themselves, whether they've been a community leader, whether they've been in government, and say, well, how on earth have we allowed this again to happen on the streets of the UK? Because we have allowed it to happen because, as you quite rightly say, of this kind of fear that the authorities have had of singling out Islam as the main reason. You know, as I think Douglas Murray often says, you know, not every terrorist is a Muslim, but every Muslim terrorist attack has been carried out by somebody who's been radicalised by the Muslim faith. Exactly, and look, you know, the statistics, you know, speak for themselves. You know, we have this PREVENT programme in the UK, which is supposed to, you know, if you identify someone that might be, you know, as a kid or someone young, you know, radicalised and not, you know, on the straight and narrow for whatever reason, that they're whatever access they've got to wherever they've come from originally, you know, you refer them to prevent them. It's supposed to do what it says on the tin, going on to commit these kinds of extremism. But the extremism that we face in this country is overwhelmingly from Islamist extremism, and yet at the same time we have a government that wants to prioritise the idea of Islamophobia, a definition of, because you've got to protect us. Well, because they need to be treated somehow differently from the rest of the people in the country. And we've also seen, I mean, as far as we know, this guy Jihad, I mean, you have to wonder about a guy whose first name is Jihad for a start, that he wasn't under some kind of surveillance anyway, and of course you'll get all the usual apologists going, oh yes, but it's got lots of different meanings. Oh really? Has it? Well, this guy was waging jihad against the West. Well, we know what meaning it was for him. And we know what he thought it meant. But as far as we know, he was not under the auspices of PREVENT. As far as we know, he wasn't being watched by them, and there was no necessarily clue about the fact that he was going to behave like that. But I tell you what, I mean, I was watching the BBC last night, and I thought to myself, I'm going to put out a tweet, and I said, you know, these crocodile tears being shed by the BBC about this terrible event, and they were all being, you know, terribly sombre and serious, and you know, very concerned about it. At one point, by the way, they actually in the BBC were suggesting it might have been a far-right terrorist attack earlier on, before we found out the identity of the guy. But you know, the BBC has been amongst the most vocal propagandists for the Hamas stroke you know, Free Palestine movement, and they have absolutely published Hamas statistics about what's been going on in Gaza. You know, they've created what I would suggest is a very hostile atmosphere in Britain against Jewish people, and the BBC are responsible for that. Well, it's the same BBC that enabled the broadcast of Bob Dylan at Glastonbury to say death, death to the IDF. It's the same BBC that was that allowed a so-called documentary maker who had connections to Hamas to put on a documentary on the BBC. The same BBC who lionised their main foreign correspondent, Jeremy Bowen, who, if you remember, wrongly identified an attack on a hospital as a missile that was fired from Israel, when it turned out it was actually a jihadi missile that had gone wrong inside of Gaza, and it didn't actually blow up the hospital anyway. And when it was pointed out to him that he got it wrong, he said, yeah, but it doesn't matter. Because, you know, the main story here is that Israel is killing people in Gaza. And you're kind of going, you know, what agenda have you got exactly here? So Israel has quite rightly criticised not only the BBC in the past, but this morning on the front page of the Telegraph, they've actually blamed Keir Starmer for this synagogue rampage. Israel has accused Keir Starmer of failing to curb a toxic wave of anti-Semitism in Britain after that Islamic terrorist attack on a Manchester synagogue. And basically the Israeli government, who have already kind of, you know, been very scathing about people like David Lammy, who called for the arrest of Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course the government who have recognised Palestine, even though it's not really a state. The authorities in Britain, this is from a statement from the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Gideon Saar. He said, the truth must be told, blatant and rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israel sentiment, as well as calls of support for terror, have recently become a widespread phenomenon in the streets of London, in cities across Britain and on its campuses. The authorities in Britain have failed to take this
immense necessary action to curb this toxic wave of anti-Semitism and have effectively allowed it to persist. We expect more than words from the Starmer government. We expect and demand a change of course, effective action and enforcement against the rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement in Britain. I mean, there you have it. A state, a sovereign state like Israel, a democracy in the Middle East, the only one, is actually blaming the British government for this atmosphere that has caused 2 people to have been killed by this attacker in Manchester, which is an extraordinary place to be, I think.
Exactly, you know, and it's a neighbour, it's an ally of ours, Israel. We share intelligence, you know, we and rightly so, because of the horrors that the UK and the Western world have faced. Not just from places like Iran, from the Hezbollahs, from the Houthis, obviously from Hamas, you know, who took British hostages, so it is important, very much so, to stand with your allies. But the constant, you could be forgiven, I suppose, when you see weekend after weekend, protests on the streets of London around the country that are pro-Palestinian. You could be forgiven if the Mayor of London obviously allows from the river to the sea to be broadcast on Houses of Parliament. You could be forgiven into thinking that the debate is just one-sided. If you allow the Prime Minister to get up in Number 10 and say that, hold on, if there's a riot going on in Southport because of the murder of 3 young girls, and you jump and you're against that, or you're far right, part of a far right bandwagon, but here, it's just terrible and divisive.
Last night,
the balance is totally wrong.
Yeah, after this horrible murder, double murder. It turns out that there's a pro-Palestine protest going on in London, which was allowed to go ahead. Pro-Palestine protest in Manchester, which was allowed to go ahead. There was a couple of others as well. And at no point did the police think, perhaps we should actually tell these people not to do it today, because it's Yom Kippur, for a start, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, and people have been murdered as a result of this jihadi-type organisation and ghastliness, and yet they didn't stop it, and they let it go ahead. And looking at Keir Starmer's Twitter, as we do every day, he sent out 3 tweets yesterday about this incident. In all of those tweets, he didn't mention Islam, he doesn't mention terrorist attacks, he doesn't mention Muslim connections to terrorist attacks, he doesn't mention anything at all about what is obviously an anti-Semitic, pro-Arab terrorist attack, and he just doesn't say it. My thoughts are with the loved ones of all those affected, and my thanks goes to the emergency services, blah, 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 blah. I'm appalled by the attack at a synagogue in Crumpsall. We will do everything we can to keep our Jewish community safe. At no point does he allude to who's done it. But you can imagine if it was something that he thought was from the far right, he'd be saying it straight away.
Absolutely, and
2-tier once again.
Well, exactly, and I was about to say exactly the same thing. And I was talking to Christian, your brilliant producer outside, but we've been talking about it all this morning. But can you imagine if roles were reversed? If this was somehow
an attack on a mosque or something?
Exactly, and you had people protesting about that last night. The Mayor Sadiq Khan wouldn't have that at all. No. The Met Police would be down on you like a hot ton of bricks to stop you protesting. And so it is, I'm afraid, another example again of 2-tier justice and 2-tier policing, particularly in London. It seems to me, and yet, look, all things can be true, but what is certain, but what is so frustrating is that the Prime Minister can't even bring himself to say it. That the facts are, this is a radical extremist, this is an Islamist extremist, it's a terrorist attack, and the people responsible need to be called out for it, and the Prime Minister needs to show leadership here, not sort of retreating into not
hiding in the shadows going, oh, we can't say anything about Islam. Let's have a look at what he actually did say about anti-Semitism on the rise.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews, and attacked Britain because of our values. Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. While this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with. We must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it once again. To every Jewish person in this country, I also want to say this. I know how much fear you will be holding inside of you. I really do. And so, on behalf of our country, I express my solidarity, but also my sadness that you still have to live with these fears.
He says anti-Semitism's on the rise. I mean, who does he think is responsible for that? You know, why does he not say... he calls this guy a vile individual. He's not a vile individual. He's a jihadist terrorist who has been radicalised by the Muslim faith, by Islamic fundamentalists, probably inside a mosque somewhere in Manchester, who have been preaching hate to him since he was a child, and he's now turned out to be a mass murderer. He's killed people as a result of the fact that they're Jewish. Why can't he just say that? It's not difficult.
No, exactly. And look, you know, we're only a few days away from what would be the 2-year anniversary of the awful attack of October the 7th. You know, this comes just after a couple of days after in Germany they closed down, I think, their Oktoberfest festival because of a similar incident. So this is widespread across Europe. But why is it
Meanwhile, we're still letting them in on boats, right, by the way. We don't even know who came in yesterday. We're not sure if they're Islamic fundamentalist terrorists. They might well be. They might end up stabbing somebody to death.
Exactly. And all
Let's put them in a hotel. That's fine, isn't it?
Totally. And all the while, you know, as you said before, you know, we've decided, as our foreign policy should be, to recognise Palestine at a time where Hamas controls Gaza, still has the hostages that they haven't released, that still, which they could do. They could have released. But that is the heart of the horror of what Hamas stand for and what they do. They infiltrate themselves into all kinds of way of public life. They've captured terrorists. They've committed evil acts against people of Israel. Young people that were just attending a music festival. You know, young people attending a music festival 2 years ago. People today, yesterday morning rather, trying to attend just the holiest day of their year. Cruelly, lives have been taken by a calculated and evil attack.
Absolutely. In the breaking news this morning, the victims of that Heaton Park synagogue attack have been named this morning by police. Adrian Dalby, 53, and Melvin Kravitz, 66, both from Crumpsall, Greater Manchester. I think one of those people was the security guard at the synagogue. Let's have a look at what Starmer says he's going to promise to British Jews.
So I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence protecting your community. I promise you that over the coming days, you will see the other Britain, the Britain of compassion, of decency, of love. And I promise you that this Britain will come together to wrap our arms around your community and show you that Britain is a place where you and your family are safe, secure, and belong.
Well, that's all very well, Keir Starmer, but it's a bit late, I'm afraid, because these jihadis have already amassed their views, have already decided that they hate Britain, and have already decided that they're going to march on Britain whenever they want and murder people whenever they want. And so, despite the fact that he promises to safeguard people from the Jewish faith, you know, how does he think it went when he recognised Palestine as a state, despite the fact that 40% of it is run by a terrorist group called Hamas? You know, that's given succour and permission, if you like, to these scumbags who think it's all right to go around killing Jews.
Exactly. And, you know, totting up all of the examples that we talked about, as I say, whether it's the BBC broadcasting things that it shouldn't, whether it's allowing those protests to take place weekend after weekend on the streets of London and other cities across the UK. I mean, there's a chap called Lord Walney, I think, who used to be a Labour MP. He now sits as a crossbench peer, that said that this government has been complicit in the demonisation of Israel. And so when it comes from the very top, again, I'm speaking, you know, obviously in metaphorical terms, but, you know, when a government doesn't do something to wash out and wash away the hate, if it doesn't do anything to call things out for what they are, if it doesn't do things to stand up for people and recognise that actually there has been anti-Semitism on the rise, that actually the government hasn't taken the action it needs to, then you can be forgiven for sort of allowing this to rise.
Do you remember, I think it was just a day or two after the October the 7th massacre in 2023, that there were pickup trucks driving around North London with Palestinian flags coming out of them, and people with sort of loud loud hailers shouting, "We're going to rape your daughters," in Jewish neighbourhoods, and nothing was ever done about that. And that is part of the reason why this guy has done clearly what he's done, because he thought, well, nobody's going to punish me for this. You know, I'm completely within my rights to kill Jews because nobody cares about them, and certainly Keir Starmer doesn't. Because, you know why? He's so lily-livered and weak that he thinks he can't betray his Muslim vote base. And that's why he stands up for these scumbags. City of Manchester District Commander Chief Superintendent David Meany saying this morning there will be increased visits to local places of worship following what happened yesterday. People in North Manchester, Bury, Salford, within Jewish communities and around synagogues can expect to see uniformed officers on patrol in vehicles and on foot throughout today, into this evening and over the weekend. I mean, what a terrible state this bloody country is in when police have to go around protecting those peaceful ordinary members of society who want to go to their local place of worship and say a few prayers, but they have to have police protection from these scumbag Islamists, right, who just want to kill them.
Well, exactly. That's the question. You know, what other religion or what other group of people today waking up in the UK have to have police protection either at a place of worship or at their school or in their workplace, where, you know, even at Labour conference, I remember all those years ago, the Labour MP had to have protection at her own party conference, police protection at her own party conference because of the hate that goes on. It is all against Jews. And for too long, we haven't talked about that because the Jewish community seem to just be able to get on about it. They don't want to cause a fuss, but they have been victims of a rise in anti-Semitism, and the balance has been so tipped the other way to, as I say, a government trying to work out what the definition of Islamophobia is, when there's another religion in this country that has been actual victims of attack and continue to be, as we saw so awfully yesterday morning.
It's absolutely shameful. We're going to take a little break here at 6:28. Let me read you this, though, from Gaza in Yorkshire. Morning, Mike. England has turned into a country of hate, and all because of the left's ideology. The murders were bad enough on the holy day, but the protests afterwards were the cherry on the cake. The levels of hate and disorder in London last night were disgusting. Let's see if Starmer calls them out today. I bet he doesn't. Well, he bloody well should, and he should make sure that there should be no pro-Palestine demonstrations going on over this weekend in any part of Britain. They should be outlawed, they should be stopped, and it's time. Enough is enough. And I think all of us would agree with that. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Prime Minister right to recognise Palestine?
That's an irrelevant question.
Well, was
it's
he right? Can I ask you, was he right? It isn't an irrelevant question. I'm sorry, John.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry,
you're
John.
out of order. You're out of order. In the
I am not out of order.
of
It is a perfectly reasonable question. Was he right to recognise Palestine?
It's an irrelevant question.
Do you think it's irrelevant, John? Are you joking?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:32. Mark in Croydon says, morning, Mike. What will it take to finally sort this country out? I fear this country is past the point of no return as we continue to appease the left and Islamists. And Mark over in Swindon says, in the week of the terrible Manchester attack, if there was any better time for Starmer to sincerely engage with the public, it would have been now. But what do we get? Another auto-cue, rushed speech written by somebody else and more nonsense about division. When will these idiots realise that recognising a Palestinian state is going to spur on our own internal terror cells to carry out acts like this? Starmer needs to step down immediately and this government needs dissolving. People are very, very angry this morning. Charlie Rowley's here with me about what's happened, and because you can draw a connection between what happened yesterday in Manchester and what happened on the 20th of September. This is Keir Starmer recognising a Palestinian state. Have a look.
Today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
I mean, formally recognise the state of Palestine. He has no clue, this man. He doesn't even understand, as he's saying those very words, what was the likely, result of those things being said. And today we are reaping the whirlwind of that, because what happened in Manchester yesterday, I believe, the direct result of him basically giving permission for jihadists to attack Jews.
Exactly. Well, it's rewarding. It's rewarding terrorists.
Rewarding terrorists. Rewarding Hamas for October the 7th, 2023. Rewarding everybody who's ever committed a terrorist act on behalf of Islam in this country, because he's basically showing that we will recognise you as a state now, because well done, you've bombed your way to the negotiating table.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
excuse me.
This is so important, because words matter, government actions matter, inaction matters. Not being clear about what it is that you stand for, what it is that you believe in, who is actually the victims in all of this. What is actually going on in our country. If the Prime Minister of the day can't understand that it is not far right to protest when you want to see communities be more cohesive and integrated, it is not far right or racist to talk about immigration, to have a conversation about people that come into this country. And after coming back from Liverpool, where the Labour Party conference has just been in, where he spent an entire week using the word racist against Nigel Farage, against the idea that if you come into this country, if you work or stop working, if you're taking benefits rather than making a contribution, and you're on a work visa, or if you're not a citizen, then you shouldn't be here, or you should be asked to return back to your own country. Today, people will be asking themselves, OK, this chap was given citizenship in 2006, but if it was somebody else, had they not had citizenship, do we think that they should therefore still be allowed to remain in this country? No, we don't.
No.
So, does the Prime Minister still think that it's racist to ask people that have come from a different country into the UK, if we ask them to leave because they're a criminal?
Well,
do people think that's racist? Of course they do.
Let's face it, one of the big tenets of his argument was, Nigel Farage wants to get rid of people who have been living here for years, people who are our neighbours. Well, this guy has been living here for years. He's one of our neighbours. He's been sitting there plotting about killing Jews for the best part of, 20 years.
Precisely.
Right? and he's grown up with this hatred in his heart, having been given the solace and the sanctuary that this country afforded him, having come from Syria, which was a place that's being blown apart by his fellow, Muslims. And suddenly, this is the reward that he gives to the country that gave him a life, a new life. And so, actually, when Keir Starmer says we will fight with every fibre in our being against you deporting these people who came here many years ago, he's actually wrong about that as well, because we should now start deporting some of these people who have been here for 20 years because they're all bleeding jihadis.
Yeah, exactly. And it speaks to...
Why should we wait for them to blow us up?
Yeah, totally, exactly, and it speaks to some of the messages that you've been receiving this morning. People who say that this country is beyond help now, because you've got a situation where the Prime Minister is very happy to allow those people that might have been here for years, that still want to cause us hate and harm, they'll be allowed to stay. The people coming across that you said earlier on in those small boats, we have absolutely no idea who some of those people are.
But we can be pretty sure that some of them will be jihadists.
Yeah, but for too long,
just by the rule of averages.
Exactly, but for too long we've been told the majority are either women or girls, which they're not.
They're fleeing a war.
That they're fleeing some sort of war, which they're not.
Which they're not.
They're able to come here, get into hotel accommodation, claim from the benefit system of the UK, all the while potentially plotting other acts against, committing crimes, a lot of them, that we can't deport because they've got a right to a family life apparently in the UK. No, enough is enough.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why people are so incensed.
Kick them out.
And exactly, and that's why people should be rightly fed up of inaction by governments, and that's why this...
Let's not wait for them to, blow somebody up or stab somebody or drive a car at somebody or, create a suicide bomb or blow up an arena concert where young girls have gone to see Ariana Grande. It's disgusting. I'm so disgusted with what has happened to this country. And I'm going to play you some protests from London, from Liverpool, from Manchester, from Edinburgh as well last night. We've got underlay of it here. And these are all, look at the numbers of people there, the sheer numbers of people. And I've said this many times that, back in the 70s when I was a child and there was the Six-Day War, there was the Yom Kippur War, there were all kinds of, situations going on in the Middle East. We didn't have protests like this. And I always say, do you know why we didn't have protests like this? Because these scumbags were not living here. Right, and now they are living here, and I take absolutely no pleasure in saying this, and I will not be told not to say it, and I will not be told that somehow I'm being racist about it. But these scumbags from the Middle East, from Palestine, from places where they are supporting jihad, supporting anti-Jewish sentiment, are walking the streets of Britain, demonstrating as if they don't care what they say. They can shout from the river to the sea, they can shout death to the IDF, they can shout death to Jews, they can make all sorts of horrible, horrible promises to kill ordinary British citizens, and yet they get away with it, waving their bloody Palestinian flags. I don't want them here. I just don't want any more of this to go on. I think it's time to stop it right now.
I think you're 100% correct, and people across the country listening to you will be very much in agreement with you. But just taking a little step back, looking at some of those scenes at train stations last night, regardless of, even just take away...
Imagine if you're a Jewish person walking through that train station.
Exactly. The fear that you must be feeling. But the idea that a terrorist attack has taken place on UK soil, and there is a celebration...
And they're celebrating
of an effect. That is, when people say... I want my country back, or I don't recognise the UK anymore. It's precisely because you have these either far left or far right or factionalist groups that seem to be able to just get away, and it tends to be the left, I'm afraid. These people who are gathering at these stations, the people that were protesting last night, that were equally, it seems to me, as robust as sort of confronting the police as people potentially in Southport. But yet get away with it.
Yeah.
They haven't been called out. They haven't been called out for being far left.
I don't see any police there, do you?
No.
I don't know where the police are, but they don't appear to be anywhere in sight. They don't appear to be policing what's being said as much as they would police it on Twitter. And have a look at this, right? This is Shabana Mahmood. She went up to Manchester last night to do a little mini press conference with what's his face, Andy Burnham. And Andy Burnham sort of took most of it. But here's what she only said a very few words, but I was really incensed by what she said. Have a look at this.
The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole of the country, and we will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. What I do want to say is to those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
To those who seek to divide us, they will fail. That's the big message that she wants us to take away from what the Home Secretary of this very country has to offer, right? Well, how about the person who murdered 2 British citizens? You know, do you think that was seeking to divide? You know, I'm sick to death of these bloody politicians who kind of make out that, you know, the biggest crime in the world is to have a go at the Muslim faith. The biggest crime in the world is to blame Islam for some scumbag stabbing 2 people to death, right? That's a much bigger crime than the actual stabbing to death of the people, right? I find it incredible that she would say something like that. I mean, she only said like 4 sentences. One of them was, you know, we will not take any notice of people who seek to divide us. Obviously aiming it at Farage, obviously aiming it at people like me, probably, and at shows like this. You know, I'm sick to death of this. Shabana Mahmood, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Absolutely, and you know, she went further.
By the way, she's a woman who's previously been involved in boycotts of Sainsbury's because they were selling Israeli goods. She's also been spotted in Greece, I think it was, some years ago, welcoming illegal migrants coming into Europe, saying, you know, you're all welcome here, come to Britain, it's going to be great for you. You know, this woman is not fit to be Home Secretary. They keep telling me that she's, you know, this amazingly tough woman. She's not tough, and in fact, if anything, she's clearly biased against Jewish people.
Well, again, just coming back from Liverpool, where the Labour Party conference would have been, you know, she went even further than the Prime Minister. I thought just when it couldn't get any lower, she described, I think, Nigel Farage as worse than
being racist. Yeah.
And you think to yourself,
how on earth did she get away with that?
Well, and you know, and then when you have the Deputy Prime Minister even going one step further and trying to say that, you know, Nigel was part of the hit, you think people can see through that, and they know,
and they're all complicit, by the way, in the deaths of these 2 men. Who have died, Melvin Kravitz and Adrian Dalby, and if I was a member of their family, I would be suing this government right now for causing it.
Well, they've allowed, clearly, through all the events that have taken place, this hate to be almost justified in a sense. You know, this perpetrator has obviously thought today, or yesterday morning, that it's okay. Somehow, because whether Palestinian has been recognised as a state and because he might be a supporter of Hamas or whatever, we don't know the ins and outs.
Well, he's been given permission. I'll tell you what he's been given permission for. He's been given permission to hate Jewish people because he's been told that the Israeli state is fascist, that the Israeli state is overbearing and is cruel and is divisive and is a warmongering state. And that's why he's been given permission in his head to go around killing people who are Jewish.
And all because we failed to stop that as the government, as society, because we've been told for too long maybe that we can't talk about these things, that we would be racist and branded far right if we do challenge someone that might be from, you know, a different country or a different culture or an Islamic, you know, extremist background called, you know, jihad.
What's your name? Jihad. No, I'm sorry, I'm asking you what your name is. Yeah, it's Jihad. No, I want your name. No, it's Jihad. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is.
Absolutely shocking. Obviously, this is not a time for mirth of any kind. We can't feel anything but pain this morning because of what happened up in Manchester yesterday, because it's absolutely awful. But, you know, this government has got a lot to answer for, ladies and gentlemen. And I talk about Shabana Mahmood, I talk about Keir Starmer, I talk about David Lammy, I talk about Angela Rayner, I talk about Andy Burnham. Every single one of the people on the left of this government and on the left of this country have got blood on their hands this morning. It's as simple as that. I'm Mike Graham.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:47. This from Bridie says, Mike, this is the point where good Muslims need to stand up and passionately condemn these terrorists. Well, we never really see that, do we? We ask for that quite a lot. I haven't yet seen any Muslim leaders getting up and saying that this is a terrible thing that's happened and we condemn it absolutely unreservedly. It would be nice if that did happen, but it never really does. Reg says, morning, Mike, it's now time to close the borders completely. Nobody in at all. We have enough problems to deal with. Absolutely right. You know, this guy, of course, unlike many of these small boat migrants who come here in the past 4 or 5 years, came here as a youngster with his parents. We don't know much about his parents. We don't know anything about his parents other than the fact that they came here from Syria and that he was granted citizenship in 2006. You know, so we're talking 19 years ago, when he would have been about 14 or 15, something like that, or possibly even 16. And since then, he's obviously been radicalised to the point where he thought it was a great idea to go and kill some Jews. And thank God he wasn't able to get into the synagogue because the synagogue was locked. But he tried to break through the glass with his knife. Luckily, the police managed to get there within 7 minutes and neutralise him and kill him before he did any more damage. But let me just take you to another story which we haven't really looked at the rest of the papers this morning as well. Charlie Rowley's here with me because obviously it's very much dominated by this horrible terrorist attack yesterday morning rather. But on page 17 of The Sun, government advertising a £5 million deal to provide 24/7, 365 days a year taxi service for illegal migrants. Right, taking us for a ride again. It's a great story by Julia Atherley, who's the Home Affairs correspondent. The government offered transport contracts worth £5 million to ferry migrants around the country, despite the fury over taxi trips for asylum seekers. This was a story we did the other week about people paying hundreds and hundreds of pounds to taxi companies to take migrants to doctor's appointments, dental appointments around the country, taking them to Home Office appointments. Just unbelievable. So clearly, Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood hasn't changed anything. This is all still going on.
Exactly. All talk and no action from this government, where, you know, notwithstanding the millions of pounds that are spent on hotel accommodation, that daily bill that taxpayers, hard-working taxpayers, have to fork out, not content with just putting people up and giving them £50 a week in benefit, allowing people who do come into this country to illegally to work illegally, whether it's through delivery driving companies. Not only that, they get a free cab to go and get a doctor's appointment or their dental care when there are millions of Brits sitting at home that can't get those appointments. They can't afford... Well, we've had people, when we were doing that story, we had people getting in touch with us who said, you know, I had to go to the hospital the other day. It's about a 15-mile ride. I had to get a bus. I couldn't afford a taxi. And when I came out again, I had to walk all the way down to a bus stop, which was about half a mile away, in order to get a bus home. That's what I had to do. Whereas if you're a migrant, you can get in a car. And we had a couple of cases of a guy from Herne Bay, a taxi driver, who rang us up and said, I took this bloke from Folkestone to Scotland in a sort of E-Class Mercedes sedan, luxury car. It cost £800. Good Lord.
And you're kind of going, what's going on in this country? You know, who is giving permission for these people to be treated as like first-class citizens while the rest of us get treated like third-class citizens?
Well, exactly.
It's just not right.
Fairness is the only word that seems to be, you know, missing, and justice. You know, how is it fair that you still have veterans in this country, people that have served, that have put on uniform, people that have committed acts of bravery, like the two people that intervened, the bravery of the police that intervened yesterday morning. You know. People that have served this country, but their lives on the line, you know, are sleeping rough on the streets. All the while, we're putting people that come into the country illegally through a small boat crossing up in a hotel. You know, where is the justice?
And they're still coming in, and we're still putting them in hotels, regardless of what the government says about, oh, we're clamping down on hotels, we're starting to close them all down. They're actually not.
But it's the government that can deal with this, and it's the government's rhetoric that matters. The language matters. And you know, and when you're told constantly by the government, and particularly the Labour government, that no. Everybody that is crossing and the left, everybody that is crossing in a small boat crossing, they are refugees.
Right.
They are seeking asylum.
Right.
They are genuinely people who are fleeing genuine cases of persecution, prosecution, all the rest of it. They're not. And we've known this for a long time. But it's people like you and I, people on the right, and people of common sense, the ordinary British person on the street, knows that that's not true.
Of course.
And knows that these people are taking us for a ride because we've been a soft touch. It's only now this government seems to have got it. But for so long, for years and years and years, it has been the Labour Party. It has been people on the left that have told us that, no, we're wrong, we're not compassionate people, that you and I are just far-right racists.
Yeah,
That is totally bonkers. And that's why people like Reform, people like Nigel Farage, are so far ahead in the polls, because actually people have woken up to the fact that, hold on, this country has lost its sense of justice and fairness. Actually, how is it that people come into this country illegally and get all of these priorities and benefits over and above people that are up at this hour, and probably people have been working for a couple of hours already?
Yeah.
These are the hard-working taxpayers funding all of this.
Exactly right. It looks like this guy, Jihad al-Shami, by the way, he's 35 now, is living in a council house in Manchester as well. So he's got a council house. He's already been given British citizenship. He's already been welcomed into the bosom of our family as a British person. And he rewards us by killing people. Absolutely disgusting. Let's get a voice note from Liam.
Morning, Mike. Liam from Kent. First off, I'd like to thank the Greater Manchester Police for their fast response yesterday and for preventing any more bad from happening. And secondly, on a much more sort of serious note, I hope this is a wake-up call to Keir Starmer and his little cronies. I hate to say it, but I think we all knew at some point there was going to be a boiling over point, and I think this is it. We can't keep this up. Like, I'm speechless. Really am speechless. What is happening to this once absolutely great country? Have a great show, guys.
It's pretty obvious what's happening, Liam. We've let too many people in who are scum. That's what's happened. We've welcomed them, we've given them shelter, we've given them houses, we've given them our open-armed welcoming committee, and they've returned the favour by committing terrorist attacks on our innocent people. That's what we've done, and that's where we are, I'm afraid. And there's thousands more like this scumbag, Jihadi al-Shami, thousands of them. What are we going to do about it? 6:54.
The attack in Manchester this morning is absolutely shocking, and all of our thoughts are with those affected. I'm on my way back to London. When I arrive, I will chair an emergency COBRA meeting. I'm already able to say that additional police assets are being deployed to synagogues across the country, and we will do everything to keep our Jewish community safe. I've spoken to Mark Gardner of the CST and Andy Burnham, Mayor of Manchester, and I want to thank the emergency services for the speed of their response.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 7 o'clock. Charlie Rowley's been here with me for the first hour. We've been looking at everything that happened since yesterday's terrorist attack in the morning around about 9:37 in the morning was when this scumbag first made his way to the synagogue in Heaton in North Manchester. Jihad al-Shami, a 35-year-old man who drove his car at some people, rammed into some people, then got out of the car with a knife, armed with a knife, tried to break into the synagogue, stabbed 2 people on the way in, wasn't able, thankfully, to get past the front door, and so couldn't actually kill more people. But the 2 victims named this morning is Adrian Dalby, 53, and Melvin Kravitz, 66, both from Cropsall, Greater Manchester. Good morning, Mike. All through my life, I've had wonderful Jewish friends. I don't understand the hatred against these people. I really don't. I definitely do not recognise the country I grew up in. Keep up the great work. And that's Sue from Essex. Charlie, it's a horrible morning. It's a terrible story. I just don't know really where we go from here, because there's going to be, as I said, thousands of people like this guy, Jihadi, in this country wanting to do us harm.
Exactly, and that is the terrifying thing. And today, you know, the whole Jewish community will be waking up this morning living in fear in the UK, on UK soil. That shouldn't happen. That's an awful place to be in, and you know, the government needs to step up its game to make sure that everybody feels safe. Yeah, absolutely right. Charlie, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got lots more to do. Coming up, we're going to go live to Manchester to get the latest from up there. You'd think we might be getting a government spokesperson on this morning. We'll see whether they manage to come up with anybody. This is Talk.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right. A woman is an adult female, and the court has made that absolutely clear. I actually welcome the judgment because I think it gives real clarity. It allows those that have got to draw up guidance to be really clear about what that guidance should say. If you want to fight for Remain, vote Labour. Now, there are some who say we don't need Brexit to work. We need to reverse it. I couldn't disagree more. Day after day, there are new allegations of sleaze, of favours, of privileged access. And it's all very well the Prime Minister saying, well, say now, well, I'm paying for it.
You've decided to repay £6,000 worth of gifts.
Lord Ali is facing an investigation. I wonder how concerned you are that your biggest donor was not fully transparent.
Are you saying you made a mistake?
It was right for me to make those repayments. Thank you. Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. It's Friday, October the 3rd, and we awake this morning, I'm afraid, to a very sad story and a very, very many front pages, all categorising the death of the terrorist yesterday, a man by the name of Jihad al-Shami, a 35-year-old man who came to this country from Syria as a child and was given British citizenship by this country as a teenager, and yet here he is walking around in Manchester thinking it's a great idea to go around killing Jewish people simply because they are in fact Jewish. He's obviously an Islamic terrorist. Keir Starmer wouldn't tell you that. Keir Starmer just says he's a vile individual. Well, he's not just a vile individual, Prime Minister. He is actually a vile individual who has been fuelled by Islamic fundamentalist propaganda. There he is there, looking exactly for all the world like every other Islamic terrorist. He's got the beard, he's got the suicide belt, he looks completely and utterly deranged, because he is deranged. He's been deranged by a cult. He's been deranged by a religion. He's been deranged by people who think that it's okay to go around killing other people. The same people who went around in October the 7th in Israel killing young women, young boys and old people and dogs and children and raping them and murdering them, beheading them, burning them, doing the most hideous, awful, ghastly things to them. And we have apparently welcomed these people into our country. I'm asking the question this morning, just how many more of these jihadis do we have lurking in corners of Manchester, lurking in corners of Oldham, in Bury, in Leeds, in Bradford, in London, in all sorts of parts of the country where they can do harm to ordinary, fair, God-loving people who just want to go about their business every single day without being stabbed to death. It's absolutely disgusting, in my view, what has happened. Israel has joined in this morning and actually blamed Keir Starmer for creating an atmosphere of anti-Semitism in Britain, in one of the greatest countries of the world, Great Britain, one of the most supposedly tolerant countries. I mean, we were told just the other day, were we not, by Keir Starmer, that we live in a beautiful, diverse, tolerant country. Well, here's your diversity, Prime Minister, and I'm afraid it isn't working. You've invited these people into this country. This particular scumbag came in under Tony Blair, but here he is murdering ordinary British citizens who happen to be Jewish, simply because they're Jewish. Morning, Mike, says Michelle from Altrincham. What's the likelihood of Starmer showing his face in Manchester? Absolutely zero. He wouldn't dare. My thoughts and solidarity are firmly with the Jewish communities across the UK and beyond. Yeah, we've already seen the Chief Superintendent of Manchester Police saying that they're going to be putting out very, very many police in every single sector of Manchester to make sure that everybody feels safe as they walk around, because there may be copycat incidents that might take place. One of the things that I think was the most shocking and shameful events of last night was that in the wake of these two killings that took place, thankfully the scumbag Islamist was shot dead by the police, so they did a really good job. But one of the things that came out was that there were last night protests in London, in Manchester, in other parts of the country. Have a look at this. There was even clashes with police outside Downing Street. Check this out. Just extraordinary scenes. I mean, the first pieces of film you saw there from Wednesday night with the fireworks going off, that was on the eve of Yom Kippur, a Palestinian protest where they were shouting death to Jews, death to Israel, death to the IDF. That was all going on in front of no police whatsoever, who didn't seem to think it was worth even policing such a demonstration. And then last night, what you're looking at now, fights between some of these scumbag pro-Palestinian protesters and the police outside Downing Street. This on the night after somebody had been actually killed, stabbed to death for being Jewish. It really is quite extraordinary. This from Anna, who says, "Hi Mike, thank you for your support for our great country. I tune in every morning. I grew up just around the corner from the Heaton Park Synagogue. It wasn't a posh area, but it was civilised. When I visit family there, I still see civility. There was always a big Jewish community, and they were always our friends and neighbours. Everybody got on with each other. It makes me so sad to see what happened yesterday. I don't know how Starmer can say to our Jewish friends that he'll do whatever it takes to keep them safe, when only a few hours later he allows these awful hate marches to take place in London and Manchester. His words mean nothing. He has to go. This surely is the final straw. My heart goes out to the Jewish community and to the families who barbarically lost their loved ones yesterday." Anna, thank you very much indeed. That's such a great message. Emma Barnett, actually, the woman who presents the Today programme on Radio 4, has written a tremendous piece for the Times this morning. She grew up very close to that particular synagogue in Manchester, and she talks about her memories of it and how sad she feels and how angry she feels this morning about what happened. We're going to try and get Emma on if we can, but obviously she's on another station at the moment. Let's go north though now to Crumpsall, Greater Manchester, where all of this unfolded yesterday morning around about 9:37. Alex Farrell is on the spot for us with Talk's team. Alex, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes, I'm on Middleton Road in North Manchester. The morning after terror came to the streets here, just a few hundred yards behind me at the Heaton Park Synagogue. We have found out this morning, Mike, as you've been reporting, that the attacker, who was shot dead yesterday on the scene just 7 minutes after the first 999 call, is a 35-year-old British citizen from Syria with Syrian descent. We have also found the names this morning of the two people who were unfortunately killed. They are 53-year-old Adrian Dalby and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz. 3 people are still in a serious condition this morning, Mike, and as people in Manchester wake up the day after this terrible news, they're still taking in what's happened in their community, which I must say, Mike, speaking to people here yesterday, is a very diverse community. We've got the synagogue just a few hundred yards behind me. You might be able to see the police cordon. There's still a big crime scene investigation going on. But I spoke to a woman who was living around the corner. She's Jewish. She says, my neighbour to my left is a Muslim family, to my right is a Sikh family. We've got a very diverse community here, and they've all come together in complete condemnation of what they saw yesterday.
Yeah, it's absolutely shocking to watch as well, because we live in this day and age of everything on an iPhone or on a tablet of some kind. We all saw the video that was recorded yesterday of the police shooting dead the assailant, Jihad al-Shami, who was lying on the ground. They thought he had a bomb. They were worried that he might have some kind of suicide vest on to some extent, or suicide belt. Turned out that wasn't the case, right?
Yeah, shocking scenes yesterday that were shared on social media, and police are advising people not to share those videos, but if they have got any more information to please come forward. The reason the attacker couldn't be approached for many hours because he had this perceived suicide vest on. It was later confirmed it wasn't a viable device. What we do know, Mike, is he arrived here behind me just after 9:30 yesterday morning as the worshippers were going in to pray for Yom Kippur, which of course is the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. A day, I might also add, of atonement. So lots of Jews would have arrived here without any mobile phones, without any technology, so they would have been panicked inside the synagogue, and thankfully, because of some very brave members of the public and security staff here, they managed to barricade the doors closed, but people would have been locked inside there very likely without any technology. So not only could they not communicate with the outside world, their loved ones wouldn't have known for many hours how they were doing. So thankfully only 2 people died. It could have been a lot worse if it wasn't for the bravery of those people at the synagogue.
And we understand, I'm not sure if it's true, that one of those men, I don't know if it's Adrian Dalby or Melvin Kravitz, was one of the security guards at the synagogue.
Yeah, that's what we're being told. by the sounds of it, a story of real bravery, fighting this attacker who had arrived here in a car, marauding around, trying to attack people. Then he got out the car with what appeared to be a knife or some sort of blade and started trying to stab people. Now, we do know that 3 people, as I said, are still in hospital with serious injuries, but he was blocked from getting inside the synagogue by the worshippers and the security guards here.
Yes, and we're told there's been an increased police presence. I mean, obviously, as you say, there's police around the synagogue where the incident happened, but have you noticed an increase in police presence generally?
Yes, definitely. So yesterday when I was here, there were hundreds of police, not just from Greater Manchester, but I was speaking to one police officer who said they'd come from over 30 miles away. So they were coming from all over the area, police helicopters, bomb squads. Today it has calmed down a little bit, but there is still an increased police presence, a large police cordon around all entrances and exits to the Heaton Park synagogue here. And Greater Manchester Police have said this morning they will be stepping up the security efforts around places of worship in Greater Manchester. And we heard from Keir Starmer yesterday, who said he'd do everything in his power to keep the security and the safety of Jewish people across the country. But of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg here in Manchester. We have around 30,000 practicing Jewish people in the Greater Manchester area. But if you look around the rest of the UK, that's in the hundreds of thousands. So, you know, it almost feels impossible to step up the police levels that much. And, you know, should the people of this country, the Jewish people worshipping, and in fact people of all faiths, feel the fear they feel this morning?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, one of the things that the police are worried about is sort of copycat attacks, because Israel this morning, Alex, incredibly on the front page of the Daily Telegraph, actually saying that Keir Starmer is to blame for this, for allowing an anti-Semitic kind of mood to inflect this country. They say this is from Gideon Saar, the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister. The authorities in Britain have failed to take the necessary action to curb this toxic wave of anti-Semitism and have effectively allowed it to persist. We expect more than words from the Starmer government. We expect and demand a change of course, effective action and enforcement against the rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement in Britain. And we showed just before we spoke to you, Alex, last night, incredible scenes, clashes with police outside of Downing Street, pro-Palestinian protesters, same in Manchester. I mean, surely to heavens you would expect the police to say we can't have these protests going on in the wake of these murders.
Yeah, you're right. The tensions are running really high. Where I am here in Manchester, people were seeing the scenes yesterday unfolding outside Downing Street, and one person described it as disgusting, shocking, and the problem is we're only a couple of days away now from October 7th. We know what happened 2 years ago in Israel, and I think where I am here in a predominantly Jewish community in North Manchester, there's a lot of fear out there. One man came out of his house yesterday and said he was worried just to walk to his mother's house to go and have dinner. So yeah, there is a lot of fear and a lot of tension here, not just I don't think in the Jewish community, but of anybody of faith here in Manchester this morning.
Absolutely. Alex Farrell, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Talks reporter in Crumpsall, Greater Manchester. We'll be back with you later on this morning. Alex Farrell there, our man on the spot. Gary says this: Mike, given that the number of undocumented young men of Islamic faith that have been allowed into this country over the last 5 years alone, numbers well in excess of 6 figures, it is not unreasonable to think that attacks like this could start happening on an almost daily basis going forward. We have sleepwalked our way into a security nightmare that has put every single one of us at serious risk. You're absolutely right. It totally has. Morning Mike, says down in Blackburn, fuming over yesterday's event. Starmer calls out anti-Semitism, yet recognised the Palestinian state, the most anti-Semitic place in the world. Recognised terrorists enable terror. And that is really what has happened. Let's have a listen to what Keir Starmer said yesterday about anti-Semitism on the rise.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews, and attacked Britain because of our values. Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. While this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with, we must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it once again. To every Jewish person in this country, I also want to say this. I know how much fear you will be holding inside of you. I really do. And so, on behalf of our country, I express my solidarity, but also my sadness that you still have to live with these fears.
Absolutely a ridiculous statement from Keir Starmer, talking about a vile individual. Why does he not mention Islam? Why does he not talk about Islamic fundamentalism? Why does he not say that yet another 2 innocent lives have been lost thanks to a death cult, thanks to the fact that Islam has somehow poisoned the mind of a young boy who came to this country to seek refuge, basically, from Syria, a dangerous place, indeed. Came with his parents, presumably. We don't know much about them. But as a child, he came to this country, grew up here, and became a British citizen. And now, at the age of 35, decides it's a great idea to go out and murder some Jews. I mean, we don't want these people here. We don't want them being invited. We don't want them being given shelter. We don't want them coming anywhere near our communities, because this is the result. Let's have a look at, what Shabana Mahmood had to say yesterday. Check this out.
The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole of the country, and we will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. What I do want to say is, to those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
Why does she need to say, those who seek to divide us, they will fail? Why does she need to say that? What has that got to do with the deaths and the murders of 2 innocent men, Adrian Dalby and Melvin Kravitz, both from Crumpsall, Greater Manchester, who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time when this scumbag Jihad al-Shami decided to go on a rampage with a knife and murder innocent people just because they were Jewish? Why would she even mention people who wish to divide us? Don't you think that the people who wish to divide us are the ones on the other end of the knife, the ones who are plunging the knife into people? There are 3 other people still in hospital, hopefully going to be recovering from their wounds. But this, as the Sun calls it this morning, was 7 minutes of evil. Why on earth would anybody from any place of officialdom, like the Labour government, seek to blame anybody other than the bloke with the knife? But no, they can't handle it, can they? They have to say, oh, we don't want people who want to divide our nation commenting on this. They don't want people making it worse by making out that the person who did this did it because he was captured by an Islamic death cult. Because the only cult of religion in the world that tells you to kill other people because they're not Islamic is Islam. There is no other question about it. Christian people don't go around murdering Muslims because they're not Christian. Hindus don't go around murdering Christians because they're not Hindu. Muslims go around murdering other people because they're not Muslim. And that is a simple truth, I'm afraid. And the sooner you expect to accept that, then the sooner we can all start fixing the problem. Because in my view, there are too many people like Jihad al-Shami in this country who have come here from parts of the Middle East, parts of the Far East, who don't understand that killing people is wrong, who think that killing people is okay. And Keir Starmer, as the Israeli government have said this morning, is complicit in all of this. You would think on a day like today, the Labour government would give us somebody to talk to officially from the government. You'd think they might give us the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. She's not coming on. You'd think they might give us the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy. He's not coming on. You'd think they might even give us Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. He's not coming on. They don't think that they need to answer to anybody they don't agree with. They think that we are the enemy. That's what they said at their conference this week. They think that people like Jihad al-Shami are their friends. But actually, they are the people who are going to slit their throats. And that's where we are. Simple as that. This is Morning Glory.
not just where have you been, but also what did you expect to happen? How do you think this was going to go when you have people shouting in the street, globalise the Intifada, when you have people shouting about raping Jewish women? Where was it going to go? It wasn't going to calm down. It wasn't going to stop. It wasn't going to get better. We're crying out for leadership on this and lots of other issues. I'm delighted there is leadership today, but where's it been for the last couple of years?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the home of common sense. We're talking this morning about an awful lot of common sense that all of you are telling me is how you feel this morning after yesterday's awful, terrible, inevitable, I suppose you might say, anti-Semitic attack on 2 Jewish people who were murdered outside a synagogue in Manchester. Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Very, very dark morning. Worse than the darker day yesterday. I don't know, sometimes I like to be like jovial, but I'm a bit lost for words this morning. I haven't even slept very well. But what's worse than anything, bad enough having a terrorist and, you know, 2 poor people being murdered, is the Home Secretary, Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer, allowing those people, if you can call them people, to basically celebrate last night, because that's what they were doing. They were celebrating.
Yeah, in Manchester and in London, having basically rows with the police, having, you know, sort of rammies with the police, having arguments and fights and pushing and shoving. And of course, as some people have pointed out, there were no police horses there, there were no police in riot gear, there were no police wearing crash helmets. The police were there softly policing it, because that's what they do. Good morning, Mike, says Steph, tuning in from Australia. If Starmer is going to increase security for Jewish schools, synagogues, etc., it means he's failed at protecting the Jewish community. A leader with a spine would have nipped this in the bud when the first anti-Israel protest started. Always tuned in from Australia. Great show. Thank you, Steph. Yeah, well, this is where we are. Not only are people actually, you know, sort of, and I don't know, weaponised, if you like, to go around killing Jews on the basis that, you know, Jews are evil people and nobody will care, thanks to what Keir Starmer says. The police now allow literally celebrations of those deaths in the same city where the deaths occurred. Extraordinary. Let's talk to Benedict Spence, political commentator this morning. Benedict, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Very well, but very angry, actually, because, you know, we've all probably seen this coming. We could have all predicted that something like this would happen. In some ways, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner, because the narrative that we have been told to believe and to listen to is that, you know, Israel is a terrible state committing genocide. We're going to arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he ever sets foot on British Isles, British shores. We're going to take all sorts of, you know, actions against Israel. We're going to stop exporting arms to them, you know, and we're going to recognise the state of Palestine. Is it any wonder, therefore, that these scumbag Islamist extremists think it's okay to go around killing Jewish people?
It's no surprise at all. I mean, it must be said the security services in this country foil a significant number of these sorts of plots and these sorts of individuals on a worryingly frequent basis.
Yeah.
On the one hand, we can be grateful for that. On the other, the very fact that we're having to say that they are doing it on a fairly regular basis, people in this country, is deeply alarming and deeply disturbing. And the other word, of course, is disgust. It is disgusting now to think that we live in a country where Jewish people not just face the possibility of violence for who they are, but now have been murdered for who they are. And it is equally disgusting, as you say, that there is a subset of thousands of people in this country whose default response to those murders is to come out and celebrate and support a movement that specifically sets out for the murder of Jewish people, again, for who they are. And you have to sort of look at this across the entirety of not even just the start of the war between Israel and Hamas. It's been going on for so much longer than that, but certainly, that big telltale moment was on October 7th, when on the evening of October 7th, London was once again filled with people chanting about how Israel was an apartheid state, a genocidal state. Israel was the aggressor, even as almost 1,200 people were, dead or dying in Israel at that very moment.
Yeah.
That was what mattered to these people. We've had the most major music festival in this country at Glastonbury, hosting people celebrating and calling for the death of Jews, of members of the IDF, and everything that sort of accompanied that. These protests through London on a regular basis, where overtly anti-Semitic genocidal chants have been heard regularly for years now. And actually, it's still been sort of allowed to carry on. Not only that, this movement has been rewarded with the state of Palestine being recognized by the British government. I mean, I'm just not sure how it is that we're supposed to be showing these people that we are not tolerant at all of their viciousness, of their bigotry, given that, as you say, the policing is mild and they get a state out of it at the end.
And as somebody's asked me today, Cliff on Twitter has said, who's organising these demonstrations? Somebody must know who's organising them. There must be, permission sought by some of these people. I mean, they're in Liverpool Street Station there that we can see. They were outside Downing Street last night. They were up in Manchester as well. I mean, presumably they're liaising with the police to say we're going to be doing this. And so somebody must know who's there, who's organising it, and who therefore can be told, I'm sorry, you can't do it tonight.
They must do, but at the same time, we have to then ask, why is it that the police aren't stepping in? Now, there are lots of laws in this country around things like freedom of assembly, which are meant to protect all of our civil liberties and right to free speech and to protest. But it must be said, I think, at some point we have to recognize that these particular protests, that this movement utilizes and preys upon our tolerance and our goodwill to spread something that is... I'm not one for going big on what are British values. We're constantly told what we're supposed to think are British values by the Prime Minister and by the Labour Party. We have that rammed down our throats. But I would have thought just one underlying principle that should apply for British people and for every post-Holocaust European country, as an extension, is that it's a really good measure of how civilized you are, how you treat your Jews. Just as a basic principle. It's related to how maybe you live the rest of your life, but as a basic idea, how your Jews feel in your country, whether or not they have to have security at their schools, at their synagogues, whether or not they have to look over their shoulders as they go out to their places of work, is a fairly good barometer as to whether or not you are civilized. And I think now we obviously fail that test.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Let me show you this. I don't know if you've seen this clip of Shabana Mahmood yesterday. She went up to Manchester to do a sort of joint press conference with Andy Burnham. And she couldn't help herself to do what all great left-wingers do, which is to more or less come out and say, we know this is a terrible thing, but don't make it worse by saying anything about it. Check this out.
The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole of the country, and we will do whatever is required to keep our Jewish community safe. I know that there are many questions that are still to be answered, and rest assured they will be answered as quickly as possible. What I do want to say is to those who seek to divide us, they will fail.
I mean, why even say that? She said hardly any sentences at all. One of the sentences said, the people who choose to divide us will fail. How about the person who chooses to divide us is the guy at the other end of the knife who's been stabbing people to death?
I mean, especially coming after we've had weeks of people simply being called racists and divisives and bigots for the crime of simply displaying the English flag or the Union flag in some cases. Those people are called divisive. Those people are called bigots for simply wishing to say that this is their country and they're proud of it. But as we saw all of last night, if you rock up with a keffiyeh covering your face and a Palestinian flag, well, that's fine. That's not divisive at all. That's just demonstrating your God-given right to free speech.
Yeah.
As you say, the people who are dividing us are the ones seeking out members of the British public on the basis of aspects of their personality, of their trait, of their background that they cannot help. The fact that they are born Jewish, Those are the divisive people. Those are the ones shouting things about how Zionists are not welcome in certain towns and cities in London. Those are the people who are divisive. And actually, I personally think most members of the British public have no problem with being called divisive if what their view of divisiveness is saying, we will not tolerate those people in our society. This simply was not a thing 10, 20 years ago. You simply did not have this level of vitriol towards Jewish people. It is a relatively recent phenomenon, and you can't get away from the fact that a lot of it is being driven by ethnic minority communities, that is to say, inherently immigrant communities who have come into this country, have brought this bigotry with them, and are repaying our charitableness, our hospitality with hostility to a community of people that has been here for centuries, that has assimilated, that is part of the fabric of British life, and we should not tolerate that. And if that makes us divisive, well, that's fine with me.
Exactly right. And let's not forget, and I mentioned this earlier when Charlie Rowley was here, you know, Keir Starmer made a big thing last week of saying, you know, the reason why we hate what Nigel Farage wants to do to this country is that he wants to go into our communities and deport people who have been living here for years, who have created lives here, who have done things here for a long time, who may have come from other countries. Well, this guy, Jihad al-Shami, came here as a child. And he was given British citizenship as a teenager. He's now 35 years old, and he's decided to reward us for all of the great years that he's had in this country by going around stabbing innocent British people who happen to be Jewish because he doesn't like Jews.
Well, this is a thing, as you say. You know, if people can say, well, we don't want Nigel Farage going into our communities, deporting members of our communities who have been here a very long time. Well, let me one-up that. I don't want these people going into our communities and murdering members of our communities whose ancestors have been here significantly longer than these people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, there have to be consequences for this sort of thing. It also cannot be the case. I think we have to be very clear about this. It cannot be the case that individuals like this commit these crimes and we're allowed to be told, oh, it's just in a bubble. It's happened in a vacuum. It's just a one-off. It's a lone wolf. It has nothing to do with anybody else. No. Somebody else in this community, many other people I suspect, at his mosque, at his school, in his family, will have known about this sort of thing, will have known about this radicalization, because these people are not quiet about their beliefs.
No.
They're very vocal about them. And I think there have to be questions, therefore, for the broader community. And I have, again, no qualms at all with deporting people who are like this, deporting people who know that people in their family or their workplace are like this and say nothing. Those people, frankly, because they are leading to this sort of violence and this intolerance, they are not British. They have no role in British. And we would say the same if it was a white nationalist. We'd say, lock that person up.
Yeah.
With these people, we have the ability to deport them if they're not British citizens.
If some white nationalist came here from South Africa, they'd be deported before you could say, you know, Henry Blofeld, you know, they would literally be straight out the door, you know. But this business, you know, we got Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, referring to this guy as a vile individual, as if he was working on his own. They've already arrested 3 other people who were clearly accomplices in what he was doing.
Well, there you go. It's just, but we will hear this, of course, won't we? You know, lone wolf is often the phrase, or mental health, you know, disturbed, that sort of thing, radicalized very recently. I'm sorry, this stuff does not just happen overnight. People do not just flip and start murdering Jews overnight. It is something that is deeply ingrained. Very often. It's a process of radicalization that goes on over years, and there is very often a network of people attached to it. And, you know, we see this, frankly, reflected in the way that radical Islam spreads in our prison systems. It's always through the same networks that go out to look for vulnerable people to radicalize, often the most violent people it seeks out specifically for this reason. I don't want to hear any kind of pandering or sense of, you know, we won't let this divide us. These people are the ones dividing us, and everybody who is closing ranks around their community and ignoring that there is a problem are as equally divisive as these people.
Yeah, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Benedict, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Common sense coming from Benedict Spence there, political commentator, about these people, as he calls them, who are radicalised in this country, who hate Jewish people so much so that they would kill them, and who hate us so much so that they would kill us as well, who are not Jewish, but simply not Islamic either. That is the problem. Breaking news, by the way, the Home Secretary, who will not come on this show, Shabana Mahmood, has said this: I'm very disappointed that some of the organisers haven't heeded the call to step back. She's talking about the protests last night. She said, I urge them to step back for at least a few days. A few days. How about you ban them from marching around, creating Jew hatred and chanting from the river to the sea and talking about the eradication of the State of Israel? How about you do that? Do your job and stop pandering to this lunatic, Islamic, crazed death cult. It's time, honestly. Let's get a voice note from Tony.
Morning, Mike. It's Tony from Nottingham. I've been to protest, mate. I've tried everything I can. I'm sick of the direction of travel of this country. I'm outraged and fed up, and I just think we're going past the point where, but something needs to happen. We need to be looked after on a governmental level. We need to stop this spread of what's happening in our country, because if we don't, I think peaceful protests have got a shelf life, and I think people won't have the restraint that they've shown so far for too much longer.
I think people are getting very angry in this country, and this could be, like many things have been, another just brick in the wall of putting a divide up between us and the savages who would kill people just because you differ from their opinions and because you don't have the same religion. It's a shocking, shocking state of affairs. Joanna from Salisbury says, "Hi Mike, the Palestinian marches yesterday, there were filmed attacks on police. There have been no numbers given of injured police or arrests. Why? This government is afraid of these activists." Yeah, why isn't Keir Starmer coming out and demanding that these people be jailed? Why is he not saying that they're going to crack down, use the full force of the law against anyone who attacks the police? Why is he not calling them thugs, as he did the people who were demonstrating about Southport? Why is he so completely and utterly in the thrall of these Muslim fundamentalists? What's he frightened of? Get a pair of cojones, mate, and start saying the things that this country needs you to say. Otherwise, you might as well just get lost and disappear and go and do something else, because you're not fit to run this country. Not fit at all. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:43. I should tell you, by the way, because I haven't said this yet, that the three people who have been taken into custody by Manchester Police in reference to what happened yesterday outside the synagogue, they've been arrested on suspicion of commission, preparation and instigation of acts of terrorism. There are two men in their 30s and a woman in her 60s. We don't know who their identities are, and obviously we will bring those to you if we know and as we know what they are. But I have to say, a lot of shock this morning and a lot of anger from so many of you, and I'm very grateful for your messages as you keep sending them in. This from Mike, who says this: what kind of person celebrates the death of innocent people? What kind of government do we have that allows such demonstrations to happen on the same day as these murders? These people are no different to those who celebrated the death of Charlie Kirk. That's true. Morning, Mike. Enough is enough now. This was always going to happen. The fact these protests are still allowed after yesterday fills me with absolute fear. Our country is sleepwalking into a massive problem created by our so-called leaders. Starmer and all of the Labour Party must go immediately. Please keep up the common sense. That's from Carl. Yeah, I mean, it really is quite horrific, isn't it? Yesterday, King Charles was even moved to make a statement. He said, "My wife and I have been deeply shocked and saddened to learn of the horrific attack in Manchester, especially on such a significant day for the Jewish community. Our thoughts and prayers are with all those affected by this appalling incident, and we greatly appreciate the swift action of the emergency services." And the Prince and Princess of Wales also said this as a statement: "Our thoughts are with the victims and the families of the terrible attack on Heaton Park Synagogue. The fact that this tragedy occurred on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar, makes it all the more shocking." And again, similar to Keir Starmer's statement, not one mention of the Islamic fundamentalist terrorist who carried out the attack, almost as though they're frightened to mention the word Islam or Muslim. It's not a word that has to be ignored. It's a word that has to be now included in all of these attacks that happen. Because I'm afraid by doing nothing and by not mentioning it, this is where we get to. They think that they can actually do what they like because everybody's too frightened to criticise them. Let's talk now to Rupert Bell, Talk's Royal Correspondent, because on the front page of the Telegraph today, in amongst of all of the horror and the ghastly stories about what happened up in Manchester yesterday, the Prince of Wales has given an interview and has said he is not afraid to question tradition to make sure the monarchy remains fit for purpose. In other times, this would be absolutely, front and centre of every newspaper, but obviously because of what happened yesterday, it's been demoted slightly. But let's find out from Rupert what Prince William means. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, I mean, obviously a very sad day today as we take account of what happened in Manchester outside the synagogue yesterday. But this is quite a significant interview that Prince William has done. He's done a documentary, I think, with a guy called Eugene Levy.
Yeah, Eugene Levy runs, he's a very successful actor, comedian, part of a series called Schitt's Creek. I hope I pronounced it right. Yeah. And then he's got a docu-travel series called The Reluctant Traveller. And within this programme, Prince William has given a very laid-back interview, sort of chewing the fat, basically, with him about life. And part of it is, how does he see the future role of the monarchy? And he operate as king, which might be in a much more informal manner than we see currently.
Yes, indeed. Let's have a look at some of the things he says. This is him talking about his grandmother.
Your grandmother? I had horses here as well, as you can imagine, was a big deal for her.
He's obviously missing his extended family. He was very close to the Queen, Elizabeth II, and of course Prince Philip as well. And he also says something about his family can sometimes overwhelm him. Is he talking about Harry there, do you think?
Well, I think there's a lot going on. I mean, he's not only his father and wife's diagnosis of cancer, and he described 2024 as the hardest year of his life. I think it basically reflects the whole nature. There's a lot of family problems for him, and one of the big problems for him is where's his support network when his generation of royal sort of supporters, whereas the king has obviously got his sister, he's got the Duke of Edinburgh, and he's got others around him, and obviously his son. So that's the big problem for him. He does feel that when the older generation go, he's going to be ploughing a lone furrow, and I think that's part of what may be overwhelming him. There's also, the Harry and the Andrew issues are all something that add to the sort of worries for not only him, but for his father as well. So it's not a straightforward job. So I think he is a cerebral man, and he is trying to say, right, how can I make the monarchy fit for purpose. But you can just hear that it's not straightforward for him to sort of navigate his way through as the monarchy tries to make sure, and what he wants is to make sure that it is relevant for the country and as a whole. And that's what his main, I think you get the feeling, is that's why he's sort of saying, do the traditions work? That might upset a few along the way. The sort of traditionalists are saying, don't fix it, it ain't broke. But maybe he's saying we do need to adapt in some way, but not seismically, but sort of don't be frightened of doing some things that may not have been done before.
Yeah, and we're going to see this documentary somewhere along the line, I presume. There's a final clip here of him arriving on a scooter to see Mr. Levy. Prince William on a scooter. So when are we seeing this, Rupert?
Well, you can see it. It's on one of the streaming networks.
Okay.
So that's why I think it's Apple Plus. I think, but I mean this is so that's where you can see it. But I think would have been given a final say-so and approval back home here, just to make sure that there's no foot-in-mouth moments. But I think it was William's very guarded and very sensible, and never actually tries to say anything that would put him in hot water.
No, indeed. Rupert, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Rupert Bell talks to royal correspondent there. Coming up, Gawain Towler joins us, member of Reform UK's governing board. We'll get from him what he makes of all the business of yesterday and going forward, how Nigel Farage's security team is going to be.
It's obviously horrific and it's tragic, but it is becoming a hallmark of modern Britain, and it seems to suggest that the country's not at peace with itself. It's all very well to listen to sort of crocodile tears from everybody after the event. What we really need to be doing is attacking the root causes of these problems and dealing with them at source.
That is the thing, isn't it? Because we had this after the Matutina attack, and there's like, little girls getting killed, and this sort of like, let's all light candles, bring communities together. But actually, that doesn't solve anything.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 7:57. We're very nearly at the 8 o'clock hour. So many messages coming in this morning. We'll be getting to all of those. Many of your calls, of course, as well. Let's talk to Gawain Towler now, member of Reform UK's governing board. Nigel Farage yesterday said, I was horrified by the attack at the synagogue in Manchester today, particularly on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. His thanks go to the emergency services, thoughts and prayers with the families of those affected. A terrible, terrible time. But, of course, following on from what happened earlier in the week, which was when Keir Starmer accused basically an awful lot of people of this country of being racist, accused Nigel Farage of having racist policies, more or less accused Nigel Farage of being a racist. And this is where we are. Suddenly there's a man committing a terrorist attack, murdering innocent British people because he's racist. Gawain, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Obviously, a very solemn show this morning, obviously, Gawain, because of what happened yesterday. But this is not something we should take lightly, I think. I think this is something we should take very seriously in the light of, you know, the recognition of Palestine, in the light of the protests that have been allowed to continue to go on overnight, last night in Manchester and in London. You know, this government is now in what I can only describe as a cataclysmic sort of death spiral, isn't it?
Well, it does feel that way. I mean, I think one of the things that really was telling is the fact that the Home Secretary is saying, I wish these protests that took place yesterday, that the organisers had cancelled them.
Yeah.
You're the Home Secretary. Yeah. If you wished they'd been cancelled, you should have cancelled them. And more than that, but she knows why, because if she'd cancelled them, there'd have been an enormous kick-off. They'd have still gone out there and there'd have been massive fights for the police.
Yeah.
Because they just don't care. They're not interested. And we have a government that's made decisions such as the recognition of Palestine. That's all about Manchester. That's more about Gorton than Gaza. It's about the voting mass, the voting bloc that they're trying to appeal to. Because frankly, they don't care about the 300,000 Jews in this country. They just don't.
No.
And if you see the sort of statement made by the Labour Party, the sort of we're with you, in what possible way? In what possible way? And we've seen, in the last couple of years, we've had people being arrested and questioned for calling for the killing of Jews and the raping of their children, and nothing happening. Nothing happening.
This is extraordinary, isn't it? But also, Shabana Mahmood last night goes up to Manchester, gives a press conference and says about 5 sentences, one of which says, those people who wish to divide us will not win, referring not to the stabbing, not to the man who murdered people, but to the people who might be commenting on that murder.
Well, quite. I mean, I've almost inevitably, in the next day or two, we will have senior politicians and senior commentators warning us of the rise of Islamophobia. Oh, these murders have taken place. This terrorist attack has taken place. We must not. We are worrying about the rise of Islamophobia. It's the rise of anti-Semitism in this country. I was with a Jewish friend last night and I did not know what to say, because I've always said in the past, this is a country that's welcoming. You are safe here.
Yeah.
Can I literally say that today?
You can't. It's awful.
And it fills me with horror.
Yeah, it really is. And as many people are saying to me today, it won't stop here. You know, this is only the beginning, because it won't just be Jewish people who get attacked. It'll be everybody.
This isn't the beginning. This has been going on for years. It's not the beginning. The beginning was a long time ago. Borough Market, Ariana Grande. Remember, let's not look back in anger. No, I'm really angry, really angry with the politicians who throw us platitudes and do nothing.
Yeah. It's absolutely disgusting. Gawain, good to talk to you. We're out of time, I'm afraid. We haven't got much of it this morning because we've got so much to do. Member of Reform UK's governing board. He's angry. I think a lot of us are angry. Many of us don't really know why we've managed to get to this place. How has it happened? And we'll be asking that question going forward throughout the course of this show. Much more to do. Coming up, Danny Stone's going to join us from the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. We're going to be speaking to the former Apprentice star and commentator Lubna Zaidi as well. Lots and lots to talk about. Please do keep your calls coming. Keep your thoughts coming through to us as well. 0344 499 1000 for your voice notes. This is Talk, the news coming up.
Do you think it's a racist policy?
Well, I do think that it's a racist policy. I do think it's immoral. It needs to be called out for what it is.
According to Keir Starmer, if you think young men that illegally cross the English Channel should be detained and deported, you're racist. In fact, if you even criticise any element of the immigration policies of the last two governments, you're racist. And yet the Home Secretary, Shubham Mahmood, tries to copy our policies.
Patriotism, a force for good, is turning into something smaller, something more like ethno-nationalism, which struggles to accept that someone who looks like me and has a faith like mine can truly be English or British.
Britain is being invaded. Thousands of fighting-age men from countries that despise Britain continue to arrive on our beaches. Our plan is the only appropriate response to a national security emergency. Immediate removal. Deportation is the ultimate deterrent.
Our flags flying proudly as we celebrate difference and oppose racism.
Labour says these policies are racist and immoral, and by implication...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 5 minutes past 8. This, of course, is the home of common sense, and we're talking an awful lot of it this morning, but we're very sad, we're very angry, and we are literally incandescent in some cases. Some of you have been talking to me about the way you feel this morning, about how awful and ghastly this Manchester attack was yesterday, an incredibly cruel act by a man who was given sanctuary in this country, who was invited to live in this country as a child, who came here and became a British citizen as a teenager, came here in 2006 from Syria. We don't yet know about the antecedents. We don't yet know about his parents, whether they're still here. What we do know is 3 people have been arrested who are being investigated for the likelihood that they were in some way in cahoots with this killer, somehow helping him to make this terror attack possible. One of the people involved is a 60-year-old woman. 2 of the other people are men in their 30s. We wait to see what Greater Manchester Police have to say about all of that. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary, Shubham Mahmood, has been on Times Radio this morning saying, when she was asked about why she allowed the protest last night to go ahead in Whitehall and also in Manchester as well, she said, "We have the right to a peaceful protest in this country," which seems to me to be an incredibly I don't know, just unaware thing to say. no self-awareness whatsoever, because not only was it not peaceful, because there were fights with the police outside of Downing Street and with some of these scumbags who are pro-Palestinian, but clearly it's a threatening march, it's a celebratory march to celebrate the death of 2 Jewish people who have been killed in cold blood by a guy with a knife who decided that he wanted to kill Jews just because he didn't like them, because he's been radicalised by this Muslim death cult and become an Islamic fundamentalist. It's absolutely extraordinary. First pictures of the victims are being made published now. Melvin Kravitz was one of those who died, aged 66. Adrian Dalby, aged 53, was the other victim. And there are 3 other people in hospital suffering from their wounds, who hopefully will recover and will hopefully be okay in a couple of days' time. But the Home Secretary also said this morning about the protest that took place last night, "I'm very disappointed that some of the organisers haven't heeded the call to step back. I urge them to step back for at least a few days." As Gawain Towler just told us, she's the Home Secretary. She can stop these protests. It's not about freedom of speech, it's about intimidation. It's about taking what Keir Starmer has said and running with it, because the Israeli government this morning have also blamed Keir Starmer and said that he has fostered and allowed to exist an atmosphere of fear, an atmosphere of anti-Semitism, an atmosphere where Jewish people in this country do not feel safe. Many people saying to me this morning it was only a matter of time before something like this happened. And the final kind of icing on the cake, if you like, was earlier in this last month, when Keir Starmer decided he wanted to recognise the state of Palestine. Let's have a quick look at him actually announcing that.
Today, to revive the hope of peace and a 2-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the state of Palestine.
Well, all that happened after that was that Hamas said that they were now celebrating the fruits of October the 7th, 2023. They thanked the Prime Minister for recognising the state of Palestine, which isn't a state, and he basically gave permission for terrorists to rejoice in their victory. And now we see on our own soil the result of that. Let's talk to Danny Stone, CEO of the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. Danny, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
Thank you. I mean, it's obviously not a good morning. It's a horrible morning. People are very angry this morning, I think, Danny, and not just Jewish people in this country, but all people in this country who relish freedom, who worship and love their religion, whatever it may be, people who were simply going to pray, who found themselves the victims of this horrible, ghastly terrorist who was given sanctuary here, and who somehow, through the course of the last several years, was radicalised into this death cult that is Islam, and thought that it was a great idea to go and murder some Jews. I mean, I don't know what to say, really.
Well, Mike, firstly, look, this is, and you're right, it's an awful, horrific attack on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. I'm grateful that there was a very swift response. Police were there quickly. It is an attack on Britain's Jews, but as you say, it's an attack on Britain, on our values. And I hope that the community of Britain will stand around the Jewish community and help us to build back. It was, as you say, something that was expected. There were security measures in place, and there is a very robust security infrastructure, sadly, across the Jewish community, because we have seen these attacks before in Denmark, in America, in Germany and elsewhere. So it's not new. And we do need to be asking questions in Britain about how anti-Semitism is allowed to be so amplified and so easily spread.
Yeah, exactly right. And I mean, the Israeli government, in the shape of the Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, have said this: the truth must be told. Blatant and rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israel sentiment, as well as calls of support for terror, have recently become a widespread phenomenon in the streets of London, in cities across Britain and on its campuses. He's right, isn't he? And I mean, I presume people like yourself and I have as well, have been warning about this kind of, creeping horror that has been going on in this country that nobody seems to want to address.
Yeah, we've certainly been warning. I mean, it is notable that during the demonstrations that took place even last night, there were anti-Semitic placards and posters being held up, as there have been chants and posters on other rallies before. And I've been on TV challenging the organisers of these rallies directly to call it out from the podium, to banish the people holding such signs, and that warning has not been heeded. And we only need to look at our medical sector to take one example to see that the regulators aren't doing their job properly in understanding and addressing anti-Semitism when it's being espoused by doctors or others, and we need more to be done.
Yeah, but what could the government do? I mean, I noticed that that Keir Starmer has not, in any of his 3 tweets that he's put out, condemned Islam in any way, shape or form. Hasn't mentioned the fact that the guy happens to be an Islamic terrorist. You know, he's a vile individual, according to Keir Starmer in his statement. You know, why were they so frightened of, you know, alluding to that?
So I think, Mike, for me, we have to be quite careful about our terms. So there's the religion of Islam. There are many Muslims across the UK, perfectly lovely, peaceful people. There are Islamists who follow a politicized interpretation of Islam, and then Islamist terrorists who, like the guy yesterday, it certainly seems, who went on this horrific and carried out this horrific attack. Now, I do think that there needs to be a conversation about how we are going to address those who are engaged in promoting Islamist policies and ideology, because that, again, doesn't accord with British values of freedom and being peace-loving and respectful. As I say, many Muslim people, indeed many who contacted me yesterday after the attacks, are. But we can't be afraid to talk about those small elements within that community that are radicalized towards Islamist ideologies. That is something that needs to be addressed.
Well, I think also we need to find out how this particular individual, Jihad al-Shami, came to become radicalised in the way that he was, because presumably when he was a teenager, when he was given British citizenship, he wasn't a Jew hater. I don't know. But presumably there must have been somebody who taught him to be like that, whether it was in a mosque, whether it was in some kind of radical group or other, whether he did it on the internet. You know, we just need to know, don't we? Because I want to know how many other people like him are lurking in the shadows.
You're quite right, and that speaks to the infrastructure. When people come to this country, let's say they come from Syria, for example, last that I knew, they were given a kind of PowerPoint in country about Britain, and then they have a local kind of liaison officer from the local authority who, you know, local authorities don't have much money at the moment, so maybe they're struggling, maybe that person is poorly trained. The idea that there's so few touch points with people who come to the UK to kind of monitor, you know, we look at the Prevent system, for example. Are we confident that we could spot, you know, future incidents and that ideology, that radicalizing ideology? I'm not sure that we can, and that's something certainly that needs to be looked at as we move forward.
Yeah, because there's an awful lot of people who are here from Syria, an awful lot of people who are here from Afghanistan now that we know of, an awful lot of people who, on the face of it, might be anti-Semitic just because of where they come from. And I'm afraid that's a reality.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves about some of the magazines, newspapers, TV content that is broadcast in some of these countries.
Yeah.
We know, you know, Iranian state-backed TV is extremely problematic, and there have been Iranian state-backed TV programs, some that are broadcast through Twitter, for example, to millions of people that contain vile anti-Semitic content.
Yeah. And that's it. And watching some of the people speaking this morning and listening to Jewish voices in particular, people saying, you know, that they've had to take their children out of school, they've had to make sure that they've got sort of private tuition because they can't walk down the street, they can't wear school uniform. You know, businesses that happen to be run by Jewish people have been boycotted by certain, you know, organisations. You've got, you know, the world of theatrical people. You've got the sort of the lovies of the world who are constantly coming out and condemning Israel and blaming all the world's woes on Israel. You know, and the narrative has been very anti-Semitic in this country in the past 2 years, since October the 7th.
Look, Mike, I mean, in a scenario where our parliament has discussed Israel, of all the 193, you know, member nations of the UN, has discussed Israel more than it has the NHS. I think there's a question for parliamentarians to be asking themselves about some of the obsessive nature of that discourse and what it does. Because my children are going to a Jewish school this morning, and I was asked by them about whether it was safe. So you're right, that's the impact.
That's awful, isn't it? And I mean, what do you tell them?
Well, I try and reassure them, of course, and we do have appropriate and good security structures in place. But it's sad, isn't it, that that's the world that they're growing up in, where they have to see security guards and all the rest of it.
Yeah, it's dreadful. Absolutely awful. Danny, this is really good to talk to you. Thank you so much for spending time with us. CEO of the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust there, Danny Stone. Let's get a voice note from Hannah.
Great show, Mike. I just want to say I am so saddened about yesterday, although I'm not surprised. This was always going to happen. And with Keir Starmer as leader, I can't even bring to call him Prime Minister. It's him as our leader and people like Mahmood as Home Secretary. This is never going to end. We are never going to be safe. And if they go after Jews, they'll go after the Christians next. This country has allowed this to flourish. And don't even get me started on Manchester and the state of it. The decline of Manchester has been before my eyes since 2008. And Andy Burnham has been at the helm of that.
Yeah, Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, David Lammy, Shabana Mahmood, a whole host of Labour politicians and Labour cabinet members have got this on them, I'm afraid, because they've allowed it to persist. They've allowed anti-Semitism to grow in this country. In fact, they've even encouraged it in some ways. And I don't know what we do about that. Samantha says this, Mike, so the police say the attacker arrived here as a small child. That means he went through a Western education, but still he was radicalised. I'm not saying this was an education failure. I'm saying we are not safe. We can't guarantee that at some point in the future, Muslims arriving on small boats today won't commit these terrorist attacks. Farage is right. We have to review boat arrivals. No right to remain without constant checks for radicalism. Well, this is exactly right. I mean, we see a story in The Sun today, one of the few stories that we've talked about this morning, other than this terror attack and the aftermath of it, is that the government is looking for a multi-million-pound contract with a company who can ferry asylum seekers around the country, illegal migrants around the country. It's multi-million pounds that they want to pay, and they want people to be able to take them from wherever they arrive on a small boat to a hotel, from thence onto a doctor, from thence onto a dentist, from thence onto maybe a meeting with the Home Office, you know, ferrying them around in luxury vehicles. They want actually a contract to be fulfilled on that basis. So they're not going away. These people are going to continue to come here. 57,462. There it is, the migrant tracker, since Keir Starmer has been in office. How many of those 57,000 people plus are radicalised Islamic terrorists? 34,220 arrived in 2025 alone. How many of those 34,220 are likely to break out of their house one day and decide to suddenly start stabbing people in the street, or you know, kitting themselves out with a suicide vest or a suicide belt, or drive a car at some people standing around in a Christmas market? How many of those 34,000 people, 220, do we know are absolutely never going to do that? I say the answer to that is zero. We don't have any confidence in any of those people. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they've come from. We do know that they're not Jewish. We do know that they're probably anti-Semitic. We do know that more than likely they are followers of the Muslim faith. And more than likely they're going to come to this country and do something wrong. Whether it's molesting a child, whether it's raping a woman, whether it's robbing people in broad daylight, whether it's hitting people over the head with a bottle. These are all cases that have been in court just this week, right? Just this week. It's absolutely shameful. Morning, Mike, says David in Chester. Is the government, the police, the judiciary pleased with how they have ignored and turned a blind eye to Islamic hatred, bent over backwards to appease the Muslim communities? They caused this. They are responsible. These murders are purely on their hands. I couldn't agree more. This is Talk.
Following a rapid response, armed officers from Greater Manchester Police intercepted the offender, and he was fatally shot by officers within 7 minutes of the original call. 4 further people remain in hospital, having suffered a variety of serious injuries, and their treatment is ongoing, and our thoughts are with them and their families.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:24 this morning. Mike, when our Prime Minister spends more time jet-setting around the world, sticking his nose in things that are none of his business, refusing to accept Israel has to destroy Hamas, who started this war, Starmer says he will do everything he can. Well, he allowed last night's marches and rewarded Hamas with statehood. He also wants to bring in Islamic blasphemy law, says Robbie in Chiswick. Yeah, he's making all the wrong moves, as he always seems to be doing. David Maddox is here, political editor of The Independent. David, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Not bad at all. Shabana Mahmood's out and about today, talking about how disappointed she is that some of the organisers of the marches last night didn't heed the call to step back. A lot of people this morning quite surprised that that this country and this government is kind of standing aside while people seem to be celebrating the deaths of innocent British people on the streets of Manchester.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I'm not going to defend that sort of thing. It's absolutely shocking. I couldn't believe that they went ahead with it.
Yeah.
Frankly, last night. I mean, talk about. I mean, bad taste doesn't even cover it. Frankly, and I know, we want to defend free speech. We want to defend the right to protest. Fair enough, but sometimes there's a time to step back from these things, and it's pretty shocking that they didn't.
But given what Keir Starmer said about, people who attack the police, he made a big mention about the UK march that happened back in London a few weeks ago, where there was, I think, 20 odd people arrested. Last night there were fights going on outside of Whitehall, outside of Downing Street, between the police and the protesters. But he hasn't condemned it.
No, and actually, I think a lot of people would welcome it if he did. I mean, the issue on our streets is not just Islamist or far right or whatever. What we're seeing is an outbreak of different types of extremism, almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And yes, I thought he was right to take the far right stuff head on, but he needs to also take this stuff head on as well, because.
Yeah, but the point is, it's two-tier opinion, isn't it? Again, because
well, exactly.
And you say the far right stuff. I mean, there was a lot of people who were on that march, that UK march, who were not in any way or by any description far right. And the point is that the point is that he singles out things that he wants to have a go at, but yet he ignores other things because he's frightened.
Yes, no, I mean, I completely agree with you, Mike. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. And yes, indeed, many of the people who took part in those protests, a lot of the protests, are decent, ordinary people who are just fed up and kind of gravitate towards these things. I mean, it's the organisers you have to look at in all cases. And I mean, I would hope that Keir Starmer has something to say on it.
I mean, surely it is within the purview of either the Metropolitan Police or the Home Secretary to say to these protesters, this is not the time to be protesting about, free Palestine because people have been killed and you should show a modicum of respect. Rather than asking them to not do it, how about you just say you can't do it? You can do it, in a month, or you can do it, in November. You can't do it now.
Yeah, I remember very well, actually, when I was on my previous job at the Express, not long after the October 7th, when we were still seeing, amazingly, these mass protests against Israel who at that point weren't really fighting back against Hamas and had been, subject to this appalling terrorist atrocity on October 7th.
Yeah.
And I remember on this very point on Remembrance Weekend, where they wanted to have a mass protest, and of course the head of the Metropolitan Police refused to step in to stop it. In fact, I think Suella Braverman was Home Secretary at the time, was kind of umming and erring, but when she tried to step in to stop it, she got sacked. So, this is not just a Labour problem. I think it's a point I'm kind of getting to.
Yeah.
This is an establishment problem.
Yeah, it certainly is. And it's also a police problem to a large extent, because the policing of last night's protest in Whitehall, for example, was not riddled with people with crash helmets on. It was not riddled with people on horseback. The police were very, very softly with them. And when it all kicked off, the police were not very well equipped to deal with it.
No, and that's been a pattern, I'm afraid. I'm not sure what Mark Rowley kind of thinks about how he's handling these things. He certainly seemed to have a much more robust presence at that Unite the Kingdom march. But it's something that worries people when you're in central London a lot, when you get these mass protests, especially, I'm afraid, on some of the Palestinian stuff. A lot of decent people there, but there's a lot of kind of nastiness going on underneath as well.
Well, they're chanting things which are plainly not just anti-Semitic, but would otherwise, in most other circumstances, be regarded as hate speech. And yet they get away with it. And they've been getting away with it for nearly 2 years.
Indeed. Well, I mean, I'm not Jewish, but if I were Jewish, I think I'd be terrified. Actually,
imagine. I mean, I just
not just because of yesterday, but because of.
I just spoke to Danny Stone, right? Who's the CEO of the Anti-Semitism Policy Trust. He said to me, "My children have just gone out to school today, to a Jewish school. On their way out, they asked if it was safe for them to walk on the street." Those are children saying those words. I mean, I'm sorry, that is not acceptable in any civilized society.
It's shocking. It's shocking. And I'm afraid to say that I've heard this story many, many times from Jewish friends over the last 2 years. It's, there isn't a Jewish school that it doesn't have security outside it. There isn't a synagogue that doesn't have security outside it, isn't ready for this sort of event. And we have to face a reality that anti-Semitism has not gone away and has been inflated in this country, and that's the harsh reality of it.
It is, and it's been encouraged by our politicians. I'm sorry to say it. David, good to talk to you. Thanks very much. David Maddox, policy editor at The Independent. Let's get a voice note from Steve.
Morning, Mike. Steve from Yorkshire. Very sad what's happened yesterday. I'm not an expert on things like this, but I think it's gone too far. This country's, the government in this country is disgusting in how they deal with this. Let's not forget this man who did it yesterday. He was brought up in this country. I know he came, was it from Syria, but he was brought up in this country. He wasn't, he wasn't got up by his own people in another country up in Syria. He was brought up in this country. So why has he got these views and values, against Jews? That's because it's happening in this country, like you said, for the last sort of 20, 30 years. These scumbags weren't there before when I was young, but they are now. And I can't see this government ever dealing with it.
No. Steve, I take your point. Absolutely right. As I said earlier, when there was all sorts of trouble in the Middle East in the 70s, I lived through all that. I remember watching on the news the Six-Day War, the Golan Heights. I remember Golda Meir, who was the Prime Minister of Israel. I remember Yasser Arafat. I remember the Six-Day War. I remember the Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO. I remember Black September, the Munich disaster where they murdered all the athletes at the Olympics in 1972. This has been going on for a long time. Palestinians have been causing trouble in the Middle East for as long as I can remember, for as long as I've been alive. They're now causing trouble in Britain because they're here, right? Jordan kicked them all out. They assassinated the king of Jordan, thanks to the Yasser Arafat. Palestinians are not welcome in most countries in the Middle East. In Egypt, they don't want them. That's why they've got a big wall that stops them from going in there. Nobody wants them in the UAE. Nobody wants them in Saudi Arabia. But we've got them all here, apparently. and they hate Jews, and they want to see the eradication of the Jewish state. And they're never going to stop saying that, and they're never going to stop protesting about it. And I don't know when this government is going to get to grips with that and understand that, you know, they, in line with every other government in the Middle East, must proscribe Palestinian terrorists and Muslim terrorists and stop this absolute horror show going on. The Jewish community, says Leslie, have lived here for years, never caused Britain problems. They've kept their heads down, worked hard and contributed to our country, whereas Islamists, Muslims and far left-like people are out demonstrating every weekend, many causing fear, division and destruction to our country. We don't have to have special units watching them like we do the others. Our government are not scared of the Jewish people as they are with the Islamists and the Muslims. And that's how it seems, isn't it? Because apparently, according to the Home Secretary, Shabama Mahmood, you know, we have free speech in this country. You can't stop people demonstrating. But they're actually celebrating, not just demonstrating, the death of 2 British people who happen to be Jewish, who happen to have been murdered because they were Jewish by an Islamist who was obviously poisoned by an Islamic death cult fundamentalism which made him kill, even though he was given refuge and sanctuary in this country as a teenager from Syria. Coming up, we're going to talk to Lubna Zaidi, former Apprentice star, commentator, Muslim woman who talks a great deal of sense. You won't want to miss it. Coming next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:38 coming up very, very shortly. We're here, of course, until 10 o'clock. We are the home of common sense. The front pages today very much dominated by that awful event yesterday in Manchester. Israel blames Starmer after synagogue terror rampage on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. 7 minutes of evil on the front page of The Sun, as you can see there and the Daily Mail and the Times, of course, terror on Yom Kippur. He was an Islamic terrorist, attacker named as a 35-year-old Briton of Syrian descent. We've been talking a great deal about it this morning already, but we're going to talk some more now with Lubna Zaidi, former Apprentice star, now commentator. Lubna, thank you very much indeed for joining us again.
Thank you.
Last time you were here, you were talking about the kind of the failure, if you like, of the Muslim community to kind of call out certain things that have gone on in it, whether it's grooming gangs, whether it's attacks on Jewish people. I mean, this morning we're all feeling, I think, quite angry about what's happened, and some people are blaming the politicians of this country because they don't speak the truth about what Islam is like and what communities are doing. How do you feel this morning?
First of all, I would like to share my condolences with the Jewish community, and I feel as if, of course, I don't speak for all the Muslims in this country, but I feel as if I need to apologise on behalf of the Muslims in this country. I think we've let the Jewish community down, and sadly, it felt as if we were waiting for something going to happen. That something's going to happen, and it has now. But I'm absolutely disgusted, and I feel a lot of people from my faith can do way more. They're sitting on their butts doing nothing, and I mean, I'm absolutely shocked, and I'm almost speechless, because it's absolutely shocking. And there was a protest that happened apparently yesterday as well.
Last night, yeah.
That is so disgusting. I mean, this is the kind of thing. I mean, it looked as if they're celebrating, right? Yeah. And these weren't just Muslims; these were the pro-Palestinian people. And sadly, a lot of people have conflated Judaism with Zionism. Yeah. And they see. Some people see Jewish people as a target, a hit piece. So yeah, it's absolutely shocking, and I'm just speechless. Yeah.
Well, as I said earlier to my last guest from the Independent, Danny Stone was here, Anti-Semitism Policy Trust CEO, and he said, I've just sent my children out to school. They go to a Jewish school somewhere in London, I don't know where, and he said they asked me if it was safe, and you just think that's awful.
Yeah.
Children, not knowing whether they can walk down the street without being attacked just because they're Jewish.
Yeah, definitely.
That can't be right in 2025 in Britain, surely.
I feel the extremists have been emboldened over the years, and I don't see the government seriously trying to tackle extremism. How many are on the terror watch list? Why are there organisations that the Arab countries have deemed terrorist organisations, but we haven't? I mean, all of this doesn't make sense. So for anyone from the government to come out and say that we're taking this seriously, X, Y, Z, it just sounds as if I don't believe it. It's just very disgusting. It's not reassuring at all. And I feel really sad for the Jewish community because they are a religious minority, not just in the UK but globally, whereas I appreciate the Muslims will say that they are also a religious minority, yes, but not globally. We are actually a religious majority, and I do feel the peaceful, moderate Muslims, wherever they are, they should be speaking up way more, and they don't. And it's just very disappointing. And sadly, a lot of these Muslim, especially people from my heritage, the Pakistani heritage, these influencers or politicians, they come out and they'll say, yes, it's really sad what happened, but we blame what's happening in the Middle East. No, as soon as you start blaming what's happening in the Middle East, you're giving these extremists an excuse and saying, do you know what, it's justified because what's happening in the Middle East is bad, so therefore it's okay. And this shows their true intent, I feel. So I've seen posts from people on X as well, been absolutely disgusted by this. And I think this is why it's so important for me to speak up, because these disgusting people that share the same race and faith as me, they don't represent my view. I'm absolutely appalled. We as Muslims need to do way more. I may not be really religious, but what I am is I'm a humanitarian. And I just feel sad. I feel that, sadly, I feel a lot of Muslims will make this about themselves. They will start. And I get it, right? They're going to want to protect themselves. However, I feel as if they need to do way more in tackling anti-Semitism, and that is rampant within the community.
Well, because people must know, for example, this guy, Jihad al-Shami, we're not sure if it's his real name, but he appears to have come here as a teenager. He was made a British citizen. We don't know if his parents came with him or if his parents are still alive. We just don't know. They've arrested 3 people for sort of aiding and abetting him, allegedly, one of whom is a 60-year-old woman. I don't know whether that's his mother. I don't know. No idea. But, I mean, there must be people in his community, for example, who must have known what he was about to do, because he must have talked to people. He must have, been radicalised in some way, whether it was in a mosque or whether it was online or whether it was, he was watching hate preachers or something. I don't know. But, you would get the sense, would you not?
Yeah.
A bit like the Abedi brothers who blew up the Manchester Arena. that somebody would know something about the fact that he was possibly dangerous?
I would say that the Middle East is a radicalizing factor, because when I was in college, someone was tried to radicalize me, and they were showing propaganda videos of what's happening in Gaza.
Yeah.
So that is a major cause of propaganda in terms of the radicalization. However, I feel as if this isn't some crazy one man who's just gone out and done it. This is planned.
Yeah.
They chose a day, and it seems as if there's a few people doing it. This isn't, we can't say, oh, this is just one crazy person and he's gone out and done this. No, this is planned. And this therefore suggests there's something way more sinister. And there are extremists, sadly, within my faith. And I do feel, like I said, like, sadly, the peaceful moderate Muslims who call themselves peaceful moderate Muslims, they can do way more. And they just don't do anything. And I appreciate there is the fear of the extremists. I have that as well. But I feel as if we are all to live in this country together, we're going to have to all step up. And sadly, I don't see that from within the Muslim community. I mean, the Muslim Council of Britain is an organisation that I don't know what they're good for.
Right.
I don't know what they do. What's their function? What do they actually do? And I've seen some of the posts that these people have and other organisations. And I don't believe them. It's all wishy-washy condolences. Oh, this is bad. What happened? And it's just
they
like
don't really mean it.
It doesn't.
No.
Yeah, it doesn't sadly appear as if they do. And that's why we need more effort. I feel. And I appreciate it's very early days. This happened yesterday only, and more information will come out. And people usually are hesitant to talk about topics because as more information will come to life, of course, that may give us more, more to discuss from different viewpoints. However, I feel that we do have an idea of his background. He's targeted. He comes from the Muslim faith, so Muslims need to do more. And he does come from the immigrant background. Yeah. So this whole thing about, especially the illegal people coming into this country, the fake asylum seekers, we have so many people coming into this country from hostile backgrounds. Yeah. They don't like the West. They don't like us. And we are allowing more and more of these types of people. And if this person came as a child who did yesterday's attack, well, that's not reassuring, is it? He came as a child, and he hasn't integrated, and actually he still hated us after all these years. So how many more people are out there?
Well, that's the problem. That's the question I was asking this morning, because Keir Starmer made a big deal at his conference speech just this week, or a couple of days ago, about how he was attacking for reform, because he was saying they want to go after people who've been living here for a long time, who have absolutely the right to live here, who might be British citizens, who might have been contributors to society and all of that. But also you've got some of these kinds of people, like this jihad guy, who it turns out is not really contributing. I believe he was living in a council house. We believe that we don't know if he was working. He might have been on benefits. These people who are kind of honeycombed around the country, probably, who don't like Britain and who wish to do Britain harm, and wish to harm whether it's Muslim fellow Muslims, or whether it's Jewish people, whether it's Christians, whatever. It doesn't really matter. The point is they're not happy to be here, and we should get rid of them, shouldn't we?
We are too tolerant, and I would say, look, I support everyone's right to protest as long as it's peaceful. So whether you're pro-Palestine or pro-Israel, I support that as long as you're peaceful. My issue is that a lot of these people protesting at a time when this has happened suggests as if they're celebrating. So that was, if they really cared about the Jewish community, they wouldn't have done that. Had they not conflated Judaism with Zionism, they wouldn't have done they wouldn't have gone ahead. And a lot of these people are also non-Muslims in the pro-Palestine protest. So we have people, yes, who have migrated here who are an issue, but then we also have the natives as well, for some reason, who are pandering to and supporting these
lefties,
the far left, exactly. Yeah. So I feel that both are an issue. We're too tolerant, and that is becoming way more dangerous for us.
Yeah,
we're failing the country, basically.
Exactly right. Because one of the things that people noticed was when Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu had a meeting in the White House, in the Oval Office, and they came up with a peace plan. All of these people who've been calling for a ceasefire from the left for a long, long time suddenly disappeared. They all went quiet. They didn't go, oh, let's get behind this as a plan for peace. We can actually get rid of Hamas, get them out of Gaza, and let the people of Palestine self-determine, let them have a proper government, and let them rid themselves of these ghastly, horrible, killers. But no, that's not what they said. They all just said nothing.
All I would say is,
as if it wasn't actually peace that they want.
Definitely. I think it just sounds as if offended by everything, ashamed of nothing. Yeah. That comes to mind all the time for me. So, we have so many illegal people here still. We've got a failure of this whole country. I don't know what direction we're heading in towards, because I was considering, should I stay in the UK now? Because I feel like, have we hit the point of no return where we're pandering to the extremists, we're doing nothing about these people? And I don't know, the whole thing is an absolute mess, and I feel really, really sorry for the Jewish community. And like I said, I don't speak for every single Muslim. I only speak for myself. But I feel I need to apologise on behalf of the Muslims in this country.
Yeah. I mean, this is what the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister said this morning. This is Gideon Saar to The Telegraph. The truth must be told. Blatant and rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement, as well as calls of support for terror, have recently become a widespread phenomenon in the streets of London, in cities across Britain and on its campuses. And he's right. You know, the government have been really, really lax, I think, in clamping down on this stuff. You know, yes, of course, everybody says we must have free speech, people must be able to protest. But when you're protesting and you're literally chanting Hamas slogans, or you're chanting from the river to the sea, and you're chanting about the death of Israel and the death of the IDF and all of those things, which they have been chanting, that's illegal, supposedly, isn't it?
I don't know what's illegal and what's not, to be honest, because people, especially in the government, seem to change it dependent on what suits them. But I would say we're
inciting violence is illegal. It's as simple as
definitely,
that, right?
Definitely, of course, inciting violence is, and I don't know what's going to happen now, but it's a very sad situation.
Yeah. I mean, as far as your own community is concerned, and the community that you operate within, I suppose. I mean, what sorts of things do you talk to people about? What sorts of things do you hear being said?
I would say they see, when they hear about this attack, they talk about the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I feel as if that, if you are doing that, in your mind, you're excusing what happened.
You're justifying it, right?
And it's a reflection. So each time someone speaks, it's a reflection of what's going on in their mind. So you can say that you're peaceful, you can say that you're sad for what happened yesterday, but if you're talking about the Middle East as a justification, you're part of the problem. And
is that a big proportion of people that talk like that?
I would say there are quite a lot of people. Of course, it would be difficult for me to put a percentage on it. And I just feel like, sadly, a lot of the people from my faith do play the victim card. So I wouldn't be surprised if they turned it around and made it about themselves. I feel like Islamic extremists are the biggest factor and a cause of Islamophobia. And so if there are Muslims out there who are afraid of now, Islamophobia increasing, they need to self-reflect and understand these extremists from within our faith are the biggest cause. Because when they're going out there and doing this kind of stuff, especially when they're linking the religion to it themselves, unless Muslims come out in masses and say this disgusting human does not represent us, sadly the image that people will have of us is that we are extremists and we're all like this. And if that's not true, I must urge Muslims to speak up.
Right, because we're in the midst now, aren't we not, of the government considering bringing in a bill which will address Islamophobia, and we were talking about it just the other day. And there's a lot of people who think it's a bad idea, because why should Islam be protected in a way that no other religion is? We don't see why it should. But it would have a chilling effect on free speech, if you want, because people would be told you can't criticise Islam. You can't say what we're talking about today would be suddenly possibly treated as some kind of breach of the law.
I would say this suggests that they've given up on trying to manage this situation in this country. I feel as if because they've given up, they need to bring in these measures because they see it as a last resort. Okay, let's bring in Islamophobia laws because the extremists are out of control, and there is no way of us sorting this issue out.
Right.
And again, that's quite scary because I can't see things improving. We're being too tolerant of intolerant people, and that's going to embolden them even more.
Do you worry as well that we're creating ghettos in this country in terms of some parts of it? I've been to some parts of it. You may well have been as well, but parts of Bradford, parts of Manchester, parts of Birmingham, these are places where there are entire communities which are Muslim only, where there is really no policing done by the regular police. They don't go there. They run themselves. When there were the troubles after Southport last year, there were police officers going into mosques and more or less saying to the imams, you guys deal with the problem. You can tell your Muslim people that they can keep their weapons inside the mosque and all this kind of thing. And it was almost as though there's a sort of two-tier society being built up here.
I would say, so with what happened with the Southport situation, I think that there was news that the mosques would be attacked.
Yeah.
And so I don't know whether they then got weapons and then put them in the mosque or were the weapons already there. So I don't know the backstory behind that. However, there are ghettos for sure in this country. And sadly, if extremists are going to thrive, they're going to thrive in a ghetto kind of environment because they're in the little echo chamber and there's not that many people correcting them. So there needs to be leadership within the Muslim community, within Britain at least, if not globally, and we need to start. We're very behind. And that's only going to happen when we be honest about the situation. There are bad apples within the community, really, really bad apples, and they're giving all of us a bad name. These disgusting humans who are killing people in the name of a religion or whatever they think is happening in Middle East, these disgusting humans do not represent me, and more Muslims need to speak up, sadly. Otherwise there will be a backlash against the Muslim community, which I of course don't want. My whole entire family is Muslim, but I feel as if that if we don't speak up and make a genuine effort to do something about this, it's going to get really bad.
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's hope it doesn't. Lubna, great to see you, though. Thank you very much for coming in and talking to us. A difficult day. Lubna Zaidi, former Apprentice star and commentator, of course. Let's get a voice note from Sarah in Croydon.
Good morning, Mike. It's Sarah from Croydon. I couldn't agree more with you about Shabana Mahmood. Her rhetoric is disgusting. And Keir Starmer. There was no condemnation. Where was the condemnation? Where was the calling out for this violence that it must end? Because that's the rhetoric that was heard last year at Southport, and the far-right thugs who are marching to unite the kingdom. It's an absolute disgrace.
Absolutely incredible. Another bit of breaking news. Flags in the House of Commons apparently have been lowered for the victims of the Manchester attack. So Lindsay Hoyle, the Commons Speaker, has agreed for the flags to be lowered, but wait for it, until 8 p.m. tonight. And then they won't be lowered. What's that all about? Something wrong, isn't there, with this place? It's 8:54. Back after this.
It is an extraordinary genocide where the people who are in charge of the country to which it's allegedly happening and all of their supporters want to extend it for as long as possible and refuse to put an end to it by simply at this point handing over 20 people who they're still holding captive. If Hamas wants to continue the war, you know, obviously I think that's wrong, and I'm sure many of your viewers and listeners think that's wrong, but that is up to them. But what they can't simultaneously do is claim that they're being genocided while prolonging the genocide despite a credible peace offer that's on the table.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to very nearly 9 o'clock. I don't know where the time has gone. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to say, I mean, a very important show this morning, a very sombre show for a Friday. Normally on a Friday, we're having a bit of a laugh, but obviously today is not the day for that as we look at all the front pages. Let's talk now, though, to Martin Blackburn, Northwest Sports reporter at The Sun. We get 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
Obviously, up in Manchester, a lot of footballers there, a lot of them involved in local communities as well. Martin, very good morning to you. They've been reacting to what happened yesterday.
Yes, they have, Mike. Yes, I mean, obviously a very sombre day in Manchester today. There was quite quickly, there were statements out from Manchester City and Manchester United, social media posts. Today, you're going to see two press conferences. The football goes on, obviously, for these clubs, and Ruben Amorim at United and Pep Guardiola at City will both be talking about their game tomorrow or over the weekend, but also I'm sure they'll have strong views on what happened. Pep Guardiola in particular, Mike, has lived in Manchester for nearly 10 years, and this will have hit him quite hard, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely right. Meanwhile, Manchester still on the back page this morning, an Old Trafford exclusive about Sir Gareth Southgate.
That's right, Mike. Yeah, ever since Jim Ratcliffe came into United almost 2 years ago now, there's been a lot of talk that Gareth Southgate is a manager who would interest him, and of course Ruben Amorim is under a great deal of pressure, and there's all sorts of speculation about who might replace him. Now, Gareth Southgate is, potentially one of those. Our story today is that he would have reservations about taking over at United because of the sort of scale of the job. I mean, it's very obvious what's gone on recently that it is a big job for somebody. Gareth Southgate thinks it might take 4 years to turn them into sort of a top, bring them back to their former glory, if you like, and that's a long time.
The fans are not that patient, are they? I mean, 4 years is a hell of a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And nor are owners, mate. They tend not to be. We've seen a lot of chopping and changing at Old Trafford since Alex Ferguson went 12 years ago, and owners. There's so much money at stake that owners tend to want results quite instantly. So yeah, 4 years would seem like a long time, but that's it's very well sourced, that story, and that's what the people around Gareth Southgate are saying.
Fascinating. Great to see you, Martin. Thanks very much indeed. Martin Blackburn, Northwest Sports reporter at The Sun. That was 90 minutes in 90 seconds.
90 minutes in 90 seconds from The Sun.
Coming up, of course, we've got the news, and in the next hour, the vast hour of the show, Robert Jenrick is going to join us. He's live on College Green. We'll get his views on what happened in Manchester and about what was just said by our last guest, who said there are ghettos in this country. I'm sure Robert Jenrick will have plenty to say about that. Muslim ghettos in Britain in 2025. Surely something's going to have to change. Annabelle Denham from The Telegraph as well. And also we'll talk to David Spence. We'll go back to Manchester as well to get the latest from there on the spot of where the terror attack happened yesterday. This is Morning Glory. Back after the news.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 9, the final hour of the show. We've got plenty to talk about, of course, in this hour. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Lord Chancellor of the United Kingdom, is going to be joining us. Also, Annabelle Denham is here, Deputy Commentator from The Telegraph. We'll also be going back up to Manchester to check in with our reporter there, Alex Farrell, to see what's going on, what the latest is. What we can tell you this morning is that the victims have been named by police. Two victims, Adrian Dalby, 53 years of age, and Melvin Kravitz, 66, both from Crumpsall, Greater Manchester, which is obviously where the attack took place. The attacker is a man by the name of Jihad al-Shami, 35 years of age, came here from Syria as a child, and was given British citizenship as a young teenager, about the age of 14 or 15, and he's obviously been nursing some kind of anger and wrath about Britain ever since then, because he decided to take it upon himself yesterday to drive down to the local synagogue in that place, which was named was Crumpsall, and basically jumped out of a car, tried to hit some people in the car first, but then started attacking people with a knife, tried to break into the synagogue, but fortunately the synagogue door was locked and he wasn't able to get through the window, and he was shot dead by the police, who feared at one point that he might have a bomb or some kind of explosive device attached to him, and of course luckily that turned out not to be the case, but he was shot dead by the police, who worked incredibly quickly, by the way, and they deserve an awful lot of praise for getting to the scene within 7 minutes of him being reported to be marauding around as a terrorist. And so lots has come out from the Home Secretary's office this morning. She's been talking about the protest that took place yesterday, one outside of Downing Street, a pro-Palestinian protest, which turned into more of a celebration of death, it seemed to me. There was also protests in Edinburgh, where there was fights with the police. There was also protests in Manchester as well, on the very same night that those two men were killed. And she said that she was very disappointed that some of the organisers haven't heeded the call to step back from those protests. I urged them to step back for at least a few days. This is what Shabana Mahmood said to Times Radio about them.
We have the right to peaceful protest in this country.
It wasn't peaceful, was it? There were arrests for attacking police.
Yes, and I was just about to say, but anybody who engages in a protest and breaks the law of our land will face the full force of the law. They will be arrested, and I would expect after arrest for the Crown Prosecution Service to do their job as well. I would have wanted to see actually those organisations that are behind these protests to show a little sensitivity and to call off those protests. I think that the behaviour that we've seen last night is fundamentally un-British. I think it's disgraceful, and I would call on everybody who is considering protest in the next day or two to just take a step back and to show some humanity and some love towards a community that is grieving. I think that is the right thing to do. People can get on with their protest. Those issues, unfortunately, are not likely to come to an end in the next day or two. No, the attacker was not known to the security services. We know that he is a British national of Syrian descent. He came to this country as a young child and was naturalised as a British citizen when he was still a minor, but beyond that, there isn't any other information I can share, but he was not known to the to counter-terror police. What I would say is it is really imperative that we all stand together, united as a country, and do not allow things that are happening abroad to fuel tensions here at home. It is really important that we're able to reach out to people that belong to different communities and show that spirit of love and solidarity, because we are British citizens first and foremost.
Interesting that she doesn't condemn the protest. She doesn't condemn those people who appear to be celebrating the death of two Jewish people who were killed simply because they were Jewish by an Islamic terrorist, Jihad al-Shami, 35 years of age, came here as a child and was welcomed into the open arms of British society, and he repays British society, having been made a citizen of this country, by killing two British people, and he would have killed more if he could have done, but luckily the police did their job and he was shot dead. I think we can all be very thankful for that. But isn't it interesting that last night, when she appeared in front of the cameras in Manchester, she said that she would not let those who would seek to divide us win, and they will never win. As if, you know, the stabbing of two innocent people to death wasn't enough of a division being caused. Let's talk to Robert Jenrick, Shadow Justice Secretary, who joins us now from College Green down in Westminster. Robert, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for being here. It's a very sad day, obviously, but in some ways people are saying to me this morning, an inevitable day, given the way that this country has been going in the past recent few months and maybe the last 2 years since the October 7th attacks in Israel, because this government has allowed, and maybe even the previous government allowed, these protests to go ahead without any kind of fear of reprehensible punishment of any kind, without any fear of being arrested for chanting ghastly anti-Semitic chants.
Well, these were gut-wrenching attacks by this absolutely vile animal, this monster in Manchester. And my heart goes out to the victims, their families, and the community in North Manchester, as well as British Jews across the country who today will be feeling lonely and fearful. And we've got to say to our fellow British citizens, British Jews, that they are not alone, that we're going to stand with them. But you're right to say that it's not just about fine words, it's about action. We've got to root out anti-Semitism and extremism, and let's be frank, Islamist extremism, wherever we see it. And that has been allowed to grow and grow among us in recent years, particularly after October the 7th, as that means zero tolerance on it. Make sure that when the police see people valorizing Hamas or Hezbollah on the streets, arrest them. Make sure that you can't shout jihad in London and get away with it. Ensure that if people are here on visas who are displaying, frankly, anti-British sentiment, that they are deported, removed from this country, never to return. And that each and every one of our institutions, universities, the NHS, charities, where we're seeing anti-Semitism and extremism, actually take action now, root it out, because this is anti-British. We cannot allow this in our country.
I mean, we've got NHS doctors, Robert, who are quite happy to be seen on social media, making the sign of the slit throat at Palestinian protests, and yet they still work in the NHS. We've got Shabana Mahmood this morning telling everybody who asks her that she's powerless to ban the Palestine Action protest this weekend. Well, how is she powerless? She's the Home Secretary. Palestine Action is already a prescribed organisation. How can she not stop it?
Well, a prescribed organisation should not be organising rallies on the streets of our country. There are powers to take action and ensure that never happens again. And look, these protests that are planned for this weekend, I would just send this message to the people who are organising them. For goodness sake, show some basic human decency.
Yeah.
Allow issues to grieve this weekend without fear or worry. Be normal human beings and just think about your fellow British citizens for once.
But hear about this, right? Yesterday evening, the Metropolitan Police put out a statement confirming that the same marchers who are about to march around this weekend had just violated the Public Order Act. They'd assaulted police officers, created major disruption and precipitated 40 arrests. I haven't heard from Keir Starmer today talking about these awful people attacking the police like he does any time it happens when there's a march that he doesn't agree with. Where's Keir Starmer today?
Yeah, I thought what happened last night was disgusting. So disrespectful that you had people out on the streets. In Manchester, for goodness sake, and other cities across this country, they should have stayed at home. It was totally disrespectful. And in London, you saw it straying into violence and disorder, dozens of arrests being made by the Metropolitan Police. That's a total disgrace. Yes, politicians, including the Prime Minister, should call those individuals out. And the point you made a moment ago about that doctor, that really does need to be restated. I mean, there was a doctor last week where the NHS allowed her to continue to practice, despite the fact that she had said that the Royal Free Hospital, a hospital in London, was a cesspit for Jewish supremacy. And she had said that she refuses to condemn Hamas for the October the 7th attacks. Well, that woman should be sacked on the spot, no questions asked. And the fact that supposed senior leaders in the NHS chose to turn a blind eye to that I mean, that's shameful. It really is shameful. Every institution in our country needs to step up now and take a long, hard look in the mirror about how they are treating these individuals, these extremists in our midst.
And at the end of the day, Robert, we have got this problem in this country because, I'm afraid, an awful lot of people from the Middle East are now living here. And these are the people who are perpetrating an awful lot of this violence against the police. I know there are left-wing sort of agitators as well who are homegrown. But there's an awful lot of people who are pro-Palestine on these marches who are from countries in the Middle East who have now come to live here and who are basically fighting out their own internecine wars on the streets of Great Britain. You know, the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister Gideon Saar quoted this morning in the Telegraph saying the truth must be told, blatant and rampant anti-Semitic and anti-Israel incitement as well as calls of support for terror have recently become a widespread phenomenon in the streets of London, in cities across Britain and on its campuses. He's absolutely right.
Look, we should be honest about what's happening in this country. There is a minority of Islamist extremists who are posing a very serious risk to the public. Look at almost all the incidents that have happened, the terrorist incidents over the last 25 years. Almost all of them have been Islamist extremists. Look at the caseload of MI5, our security service. It's 80% Islamist extremism. Let's have an honest debate about what's going on and then take action. Make sure the Home Office programmes like Prevent, which are supposed to be bearing down on this, are as robust as possible. Deport the people that we can who have these anti-British sentiments. Get them out of our country. Make sure the police are arresting people who are valorising Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, Palestine action on the streets of this country. That is what we've got to ensure. And yes, when it comes to immigration, we should be honest that we have imported people into our country over the last 25 years, many of whom are from countries that have, frankly, medieval attitudes. Attitudes towards women and girls, and yes, where it is prevalent, anti-Semitism. And that is wrong. We've got to therefore have a different immigration system that puts the safety of the British public, whether it's British Jews or anyone else, first, second and last.
Yeah, absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Robert Jenrick, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Justice Secretary speaking there from College Green in Westminster. Elle says this, morning Mike, I'm a British woman living in beautiful, safe Israel and have never heard you so annoyed. Today, I'm ashamed of being British. My Israeli friends asked why I came to live in Israel and today they understand. Yesterday afternoon, during Peter Cardwell's programme, a video from Richard Tice's office window showed a pro-Palestine protest. Absolutely disgusting. Starmer is an absolute disgrace and this is Hamas repaying you for recognising them. Well, I fear, Lydia L, rather, that you must be entirely correct. Bill in Cheshire says the Manchester terrorist, the clue is in his first name, Jihad, for heaven's sake. How many thousands of other people like him are out there? Well, that is the question that we need to answer. Let's talk to Annabel Denham, Deputy Comment Editor at The Telegraph. Annabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
You put out a tweet yesterday that said more than 1 in 5 British people now hold or agree with anti-Semitic views. It has become the acceptable face of racism in this country, and those who have ignored or pandered to it ought to be ashamed. I think everybody this morning is angry and disturbed by what happened in Manchester yesterday, but more disturbingly perhaps for us, a lot of people kind of say they're not that surprised that it's happened.
Well, no, Mike, if I'm being perfectly honest, when I heard the news, I thought, well, it was only a matter of time. This is just our worst fears being confirmed because, you know, as we've said, 1 in 5 Brits is now anti-Semitic. 1 in 5. Yeah. I mean, it's an absolutely staggering figure. And it's something that British Jews have been warning about for months and months, ever since that October 7th pogrom. And they've been warning that it's the acceptable face of racism. They've been warning that we're seeing the normalization of hate. And rather than tackle this, what have we done as a country? Well, we've recognized Palestinian statehood and we've demonized Israel and we've turned a blind eye to very overt anti-Semitism taking place, you know, that we see on our streets at the weekends, and that covert anti-Semitism in parts of the media and among politicians. And then we claim to be shocked and surprised and horrified when there's an atrocity that's committed like this. But, in some ways, it was inevitable. And what we need is for our politicians, our political establishment, to take a far tougher line on this. There are all sorts of things that Keir Starmer could and should be doing. Of course, he issued that statement yesterday, and he likes to think of himself as a paragon of virtue and a man who does the right thing, and he's insisting that he'll do everything in his power to guarantee the security that British Jews deserve. But does anybody think that this is anything more than hollow words at a time when his government is doing things like considering bringing in a blasphemy law, but for one religion only?
Yes.
They have consistently pandered to, who they seem to view as Muslim voters who are maybe shifting allegiances towards independent MPs. And, look at the state of our country, partly as a consequence.
Well, look at what he actually says as well, and listen to how he says it, because, we haven't heard from Starmer this morning about the roughing up of police officers last night in London and the 40 arrests that were made by people who were attacking the police, right? And this is what he said yesterday about the rise in anti-Semitism.
A vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews, and attacked Britain because of our values. Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. While this is not a new hate, this is something Jews have always lived with. We must be clear. It is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it once again. To every Jewish person in this country, I also want to say this. I know how much fear you will be holding inside of you. I really do. And so, on behalf of our country, I express my solidarity, but also my sadness that you still have to live with these fears.
I mean, listening to that, Annabelle, you'd wonder who it was that was committing all these anti-Semitic attacks. You'd wonder, is there any one group of people that you could perhaps name as carrying out all of this anti-Semitism? You'd wonder whether it's coming from any particular part of the country. He doesn't want to give anybody the blame for this, right?
No, and I think without identifying the threat and the origin of the threat, it's very difficult for anybody to take seriously his promises of security. And as the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, just told you, it's around 75–80% of Prevent's caseload that's going towards Islamist extremism. And we shouldn't be squeamish about talking about it. And, to that end, we ought to be much more selective now about immigration. We must be much less fearful of concepts like racism and Islamophobia, because they seem to have been, deployed to such a degree that they've lost really all sense of meaning. If Starmer was serious about tackling this, then we would have a shift in how police officers operate and spending a lot more time out on the beat and less in their cars. We'd have rigorous checks on what imams are preaching, and we would be banning pro-Palestine marches for the time being, as well as continuing to prosecute Palestine action. I don't say that lightly, because I believe in the right to protest, and I believe in freedom of expression. It's a cornerstone of our democracy and our society, and a very important integral part of British identity, that thing that Keir Starmer struggled to define earlier this week. But, we have had temporary bans in the past. They banned marches in Northern Ireland from time to time. The EDL and National Front marches have been banned in the past. So there is precedent there. And of course, Mike, you and I would like to think that we live in a decent country where people might not take to the streets to march against Israel on the very day, on Yom Kippur, that Jewish communities up and down the country are mourning this terrible attack. But unfortunately, people do seem to have lost, or some people do seem to have lost any sense of solidarity with their fellow man and any sense of fundamental decency. So unfortunately, I think the authorities will need to step in.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that, you know, we see this all through various different lenses, I suppose, depending on, you know, where we're looking at it from. But you can't dismiss the fact that the Israeli Foreign Affairs Minister has come out very, very firmly this morning and blamed Keir Starmer for allowing this anti-Semitic and anti-Israeli incitement to go ahead on the streets of Britain for the best part of the last 2 years, since October the 7th, 2023. But also, you have to remember that he made the most divisive speech in Labour Party conference this very week, just a couple of days ago, in which he referred to people who he didn't agree with as the enemy, in which he referred to the reform agenda as racist, in which he basically called, you know, several million people in this country racist. You know, so he has created an atmosphere of absolute sort of febrile nastiness on the streets, and it's now, you know, taking hold.
Well, I thought his speech completely lacked any sense of self-awareness. How can you complain about toxic division and divisive figures in British politics and the fact that we're becoming increasingly polarised at the same time as, you know, denouncing reform policies as racist? You know, where do you think that that's going to lead us? And what does he think the optics of that were fundamentally? But ultimately, Mike, you know, this is the way that the left operate. They will do all that they can to shut down anybody who expresses a view that dissents from their progressive orthodoxy, and they'll use whatever tactics they can. And, you know, when it comes to Starmer and anti-Semitism, you'd almost think that he hasn't been Prime Minister for the last 14 months, and that this massive rise in anti-Semitic incidents hasn't happened on his watch. But again, the left carved the world into two parts. It's the oppressors and the oppressed, and to their mind, you know, Jewish people or Israel is an oppressive force, and therefore, you know, he really struggles to side with them and defend them and listen to the Jewish community when they're expressing very profound concerns for their own safety and their own security. Yeah. But that's ultimately the sort of guiding philosophy of people like Keir Starmer and those on the left.
That's true. And also, more to the point, he's more than concerned about criticising anything to do with Islam. He can't see himself doing it because he thinks it will somehow harm his voting base, which is so pathetic and cringeworthy. I don't know where to go with that. Annabelle, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Annabelle Denham, Deputy Comment Editor at The Telegraph. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. This stabbing yesterday did not surprise me whatsoever. This is what happens when you allow an unholy alliance between the left and Islam to fester in our country for years, ever since the attacks on Israel, when the Palestinians and Hamas flew over the border to rape and murder. These people have been able to say and do exactly what they want with no consequence. They've been able to spray Jews, give Jews dogs abuse down the streets, chant about raping the women, and nobody does anything because the Labour Party might lose a few votes. These people should not be in our country. I mean, good God, his name is Jihad. If there's not any more red flags, then I don't know what is, Mike. Something needs to be done, mate. These people shouldn't be here. Great show, mate.
Sean, thank you very much indeed. I think a lot of people will share that view. These people should not be here. You know, Keir Starmer talks about people who have been here for, you know, years and years and years, living here happily, joyfully, not creating a problem, not breaking the law. Well, this guy's just broken the law. He's just murdered 2 people. What else has he done in the time that he was here, supposedly minding his own business? Mark from Nottingham says, look how many religious atrocities have happened in the UK. Every one in the name of Islam. This is a Christian country. It's time to stop pandering to UK Islam. And one here from Peter, who says, good morning, Mike. The government and the police forces all over the country, particularly in London, have a lot to answer for. They have allowed pro-Palestinian marches to go on for the best part of 2 years, full of illegal chanting and anti-Semitism. Starmer and the police chiefs have blood on their hands. A lot of people would agree with that. We're going to talk next to David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, former Metropolitan Detective, Chief Inspector from the Metropolitan Police, of course, as well. He's always got lots of sensible things to say. Plus, later on, we'll go back up to Manchester and check in with our reporter on the scene to find out what's happening up there as we speak. This is Talk.
I can confirm that 2 other individuals have been arrested in connection with this incident. We can confirm that 2 members of our Jewish community have sadly died as a result of this attack. Following a rapid response, armed officers from Greater Manchester Police intercepted the offender, and he was fatally shot by officers within 7 minutes of the original call.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:32. I'm Mike Graham. This one from Paul, who says, Paul from Hartlepool, my thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the people killed yesterday. How can Two-Faced Two-Tier say he stands in solidarity when he recognises Palestine, who want to kill every Jew on the planet? Well, there is a bit of a problem with that, isn't there? He doesn't seem to see the connection, Keir Starmer. He came out yesterday and said he was going to do all he can to protect the Jewish community in Britain. Well, it's a bit late for that, isn't it? You know, he's been allowing these protests to go on for 2 years practically. Don't forget, next week, in a few days' time, it's the anniversary of October the 7th, 2023, the 2-year anniversary. We've had non-stop pro-Palestinian protests every single weekend since that weekend. And they even had one that weekend at outside the Israeli embassy protesting against Israel before Israel had even retaliated in any way, shape or form. It's absolutely shameful. This from Susan. I just want to express my appreciation and gratitude to you this morning, Mike. We truly need common sense voices like yours in the media at times like this. Well, thank you, Susan, and thank you very much for listening. Elaine from Bracknell says, I think for a start the police should find out which mosque this terrorist attended and shut it down. It's so obvious they're scared of the Muslims. It's bloody embarrassing. Well, let's talk now to our good friend, Mr. David Spencer, Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange, former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. David, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us. I mean, the police, I have to say, did a brilliant job yesterday. They got to this scumbag within 7 minutes, I think, of being called that he was outside a mosque, outside a synagogue, rather, trying to break in through the window with his knife. And they neutralised him in a very, very efficient and very fast manner. So I think we should start off by thanking them for that. But, I mean, obviously they've got a very difficult problem in this country now because we don't really know how many other Jihad al-Shamis there are out there who might feel now empowered more because of the fact that Keir Starmer's recognised the Palestinian state, because of the fact that, you know, it would appear that Hamas are winning the propaganda war. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's an awful lot of Semitic feeling in this country, as we just heard from Annabel Denham. 1 in 5 people in this country now supports anti-Semitic beliefs.
Yeah, well, certainly you're absolutely right about the bravery of the police officers, and indeed those who were inside the synagogue and who were doing security at the synagogue yesterday as well. Just remarkable bravery. And on the police officers as well, we saw the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, Sir Stephen Watson, in his press conference yesterday, the model of the sort of police chief that we need in this country. Yeah. Someone that we've hosted here at Policy Exchange before, giving a really confident and clear briefing to the media and to the public in terms of what had happened and what his force was going to be doing next. So I think we saw a really good day by Greater Manchester Police yesterday, and particularly by the officers on the ground and the Chief Constable. Yeah. In terms of the sort of the wider picture, of course, a lot of people have said they're horrified but not surprised about what happened yesterday, and I would join that as well. The reality is we cannot be surprised when we have essentially allowed to be normalised the sort of anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic sentiment that we have in the last 2 years with the widespread pro-Palestinian marches that have taken place over the last 2 years. I think one of the things that's really revealing about these marches as well is that obviously we saw the demonstrations yesterday in Whitehall, which obviously got really out of order, control, but also I think Manchester, Edinburgh, Liverpool street stations. And they were out straight away, these marchers, after this terrible atrocity. And we saw exactly the same after the 7/10 terrorist attacks, is that the pro-Palestinian organisers of these marches were applying to the police within hours of that atrocity happening. So, you know, it is quite remarkable, but now unsurprising, that these marchers, these protesters, are ready to go as soon as there is any atrocity at all, any attack against the Jewish people. They're ready to go. And personally, I have to say, I find it repugnant.
Well, I do too, and I think a lot of people do. And I get the point that, you know, people should be allowed to make demonstrations and they should be allowed to protest, even if you find it repugnant, la-di-la, that's fine. But, you know, in this particular instance, surely to heavens, Shabana Mahmood, who's now claiming that she is completely powerless to stop them. This is in the same week, by the way, and 24 hours after, Keir Starmer says he's going to do everything he can to protect the Jewish communities of this country. Well, allowing people to march around major cities of this country, chanting from the river to the sea and calling for the death of an entire nation and calling for the assassination of individual Israelis and individual politicians who are, you know, perhaps seen as pro-Zionist and all of that. You know, that is not protecting the Jewish community. And surely to heavens, if Palestine Action, for example, is planning to march, they're a proscribed terrorist organisation right now. Surely the Home Secretary of this country could stop that if she wanted to.
Well, there are very specific powers about what you can ban in terms of protest. So you can't ban an assembly, so a static protest, but you can ban a march, and they have been banned several times over the last sort of 20 years or so. So a march certainly can be banned. Now, the circumstances where you can do that are quite tightly defined, and if it was in London, the Commissioner would have to apply to the Home Secretary for permission to have the march banned, and it's only if there is a risk of serious disruption or serious risk of serious public disorder. Now, actually, when we wrote about this about a year ago at Politics Exchange, we said that the circumstances should be broadened somewhat to be able to ban a march to include very serious disruption to the life of the community or very serious risk of serious damage.
Right.
At the moment, there are provisions which enable a ban, but they are very tightly defined.
Right. I mean, what about the other excuse that they use whenever they want to pop round to your house for a tweet that you've sent out that you don't like, and they call it distress to people? You know, surely marching around calling for the death of Israel is going to distress people who are Jewish. And so they could always use that. The Metropolitan Police, by the way, have just issued this statement about 10 minutes ago. The horrific terrorist attack that took place in Manchester yesterday will have caused significant fear and concern in communities across the UK, including here in London. Yet at a time when we want to be deploying every available officer to ensure the safety of those communities, we are instead having to plan for a gathering of more than 1,000 people in Trafalgar Square on Saturday in support of a terrorist organisation. By choosing to encourage mass law-breaking on this scale, Defend Our Juries are drawing resources away from the communities of London at a time when they are needed most. We urge them to do the responsible thing and delay or cancel their plans. I mean, the police are actually admitting this is an unlawful gathering, right, on the basis that they're supporting a proscribed terrorist group, and yet they're not stopping it.
Well, I think the circumstance... Yeah, the law, the legal framework probably means that they can't stop the actual assembly. If there was a march, that would be different. But an assembly, they probably can't do that. Now, the reality is the police have made an unreasonable request here, given the circumstances and the context. But once again, we see that the organisers of these protests are very happy to go ahead. I imagine the organisers are delighted that this is the circumstances that they find themselves in over the coming week or so, or over the coming weekend. The reality is what we need to see from the police is they cannot back down. They need to be absolutely robust. Anyone that is breaking the law to even the slightest degree needs to be arrested and put before the courts. So the police, they do have the resources and the manpower to do this, particularly in London. There's 33,000 police officers available for deployment. They absolutely need to be policing these protests within the law and robustly to deal with these people.
Well, the last time there was Palestine Action protest, I seem to remember, there was about 900 arrests.
That's right. And I mean, that is the...
Isn't that a good enough reason to say that that is such an unlawful act that we're not going to allow it to go ahead?
Well, certainly when we've looked at this in terms of the legal framework before, we've said that the legal framework is not sufficient and there do need to be some changes. But the number one thing that the police need to be doing is applying conditions within the law, so restricting where the protests are able to take place and the times they're able to take place and these sorts of things. But where law breaking happens, these people need to be arrested and brought before the courts. And so we saw, particularly in the early stages of these mass demos, all sorts of deeply unpleasant things, people calling for intifada and these sorts of things, and the police weren't stepping in, or calling for jihad and not stepping in. The police have recognised that they didn't get everything right. Well, what we need to see is them getting everything right, and that means arresting these people when the law is broken.
Yeah. Absolutely right. David, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Head of Crime and Justice at Policy Exchange, also former Metropolitan Police Detective Chief Inspector. Why on earth can't the Home Secretary just say, look, this is not going to happen, not this weekend. Any other weekend you can do it, but not this weekend. It's inappropriate, it's going to cause trouble, and it's likely to cause injury and problems for the police force while they police it. Because we know, for example, there were 40 arrests last night. Where's Keir Starmer? Why is he not coming out and saying these far-left thugs have been employed in beating up the police and we will not have it and we will prosecute them to the full extent of the law? Why is he not saying that? I'll tell you why. Because he's frightened of Islam. This is true, and this is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:45. Chris says this. Good morning, Mike. I noticed Starmer didn't say anything about being an Islamist terrorist, but if it was anything else, or anyone else, he would have mentioned them. Bev says, morning, Mike, in Framlingham. What a very sad day, made worse by the fact that the pro-Palestinian marches were policed so softly. What has this country come to? Shame on this government. Yeah, I think a lot of people saying the same thing this morning. Let's go back up north, though, to Crumpsall, the scene of that terrible terrorist attack yesterday morning. Alex Farrell is there for us at Talk. Alex, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. And just 24 hours ago, behind me here on Middleton Road, North Manchester, at the Heaton Park Synagogue, we now know that one assailant, Jihad al-Shami, a 35-year-old British citizen originally from Syria, he is believed to have had his British citizenship when he was a teenager. He grew up around this area where I am right now. He ploughed his car, a black Kia Picanto hatchback, into worshippers as they were on the way to the synagogue, but it's only a few hundred yards just behind me. He then got out of his car and proceeded to stab, and I quote somebody on the scene, as many people as he possibly could. He did eventually end up killing 2 Jewish worshippers here on the scene, and 3 are currently in a critical condition in hospital, Mike. And I'm hearing that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is on his way here to Manchester. Not sure when he'll arrive, but I think his visit is imminent. Of course, he's been calling this out as anti-Semitism and saying he'll put in extra security to protect Jewish worshippers all across the country. But we've got around 30,000 people who are Jewish here in the Greater Manchester area, and of course tens of thousands more across the country. And like you've been saying in the last few minutes, with various different protests planned for this weekend in London and other locations, I'm not too sure how Keir Starmer can guarantee the safety of Jews across the UK.
No, I don't think he can either. And elsewhere, Alex, any more information about the assailant, about the murderer himself? I mean, we know his name, we know he's 35 years of age. We don't know much else about him, really.
We don't know too much about him. According to social media, he has children and possibly even grandchildren. He is 35. He grew up just a few streets away from where I am here. He came across from Syria when he was a child. We believe he got citizenship when he was around 16 years old. Jihad al-Shami is his name, although that hasn't been formally verified, but that's what the media are reporting. And he clearly turned up with some grave intentions. He had what was described as looking like a suicide bomb strapped to himself. That was later confirmed to be not a viable explosive device, but he did manage to unfortunately kill 2 worshippers, Adrian Dolby, who is 53, and Melvin Kravitz, who's 66. Unfortunately, both passed away on the scene.
Yeah, Alex, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Alex Farrell keeping us updated there up in Crumpsall, where, of course, the police are still very much in evidence, and more police are supposedly going to be put out on patrol because Keir Starmer says he wants to safeguard every single Jewish person in every single Jewish community in the country. However, as we know, there are already plans for an anti-Semitic march to take place in London over the course of the weekend. On Saturday, the Metropolitan Police have asked for them to do the responsible thing and delay or cancel their plans, which seems to me to be a rather ludicrous request from the police. Surely the police should just say, we are telling you on this occasion that you cannot go ahead with your march because it is in incredibly poor taste, and we will arrest anyone who turns up to try and take part in it. That's what it should be saying, but that's not what they say. Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, saying she has no power to stop it. What's going on? Let's get a voice note from Wayne.
Good morning, Mike. I am going to try not to swear because I am beyond angry, and I just don't know what to do with myself. I'm so upset what happened yesterday, and the annoying thing is we all knew it was coming. We all know this was going to happen because the gaslighting by the Labour Party, by the Prime Minister, by the Deputy Prime Minister, by the Home Secretary's speech yesterday with the insinuations, you know, if you're a flag waver, if you vote for Reform's policy, Nigel Farage is a part of Hitler Youth, you're racist, you're this. It's just so insightful, so insightful, and such dangerous language. You know, let's call a spade here. The Labour Party, the only party to be found independently guilty of anti-Semitism. Now, I'm sorry, Mike, and you may agree, you may not, but anti-Semitic is just a white-collar liberal elite inside the M25 London way of saying racist, because that's what it is. If you're anti-Semitic, you're racist. So let that sink in. The Labour Party have been found to be racist to its core, yet they're the ones that try and point the finger, and they're the ones that are in charge, and they're the ones that are adding fuel to the fire. It's disgraceful.
Wayne, it really is, and so many people like Wayne this morning, very angry, you know, very hard not to swear for me this morning, because it is absolutely disgusting what's happened and what's been allowed to happen over the course of the last 2 years, since October the 7th, 2023. Let's not forget, every single bloody weekend there's been one of these protests. Every single weekend for 2 years, solid. And now they want to do another one tomorrow. Just unbelievable. And the government apparently powerless to stop it. Keir Starmer talks a good game. He's going to protect the Jewish community. Oh, really? Are you? But you're going to let these anti-Semitic, pro-Palestinian protesters march around London and Manchester and possibly Edinburgh and God knows where else, because it's their public right. Do me a favour. There's a talk.
Following a rapid response, armed officers from Greater Manchester Police intercepted the offender and he was fatally shot by officers within 7 minutes of the original call. 4 further people remain in hospital, having suffered a variety of serious injuries, and their treatment is ongoing, and our thoughts are with them and their families.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:55. Alex Phillips here, just coming up before 10 o'clock to tell us what's going on between 10 and 1, of course, and then later on, of course, Ian Collins, and then Peter Cardwell with Drive, and then, of course, Kevin O'Sullivan with the political asylum. Plank of the Week tonight as well, out there at 7 p.m. On YouTube. You want to see that because it's quite a big week for that. A couple of things to mention just on this protest business, right? There is apparently a way by which the protest can be stopped, and it involves the police asking the Home Secretary to ban it. That's what they would have done in the previous times. The police are saying they can't ban it, but they are able to ask permission to ban it if the Home Secretary gives her permission. Shabana Mahmood, of course, is saying that she can't ban it. So somebody's not right here, and I think it's Shabana Mahmood who's got it wrong, because I think she could indeed ban it if she was asked to do so by the police. But, of course, the police then have to ask to ban it. That's what's not going on. Let's hear again from Lubna Zaidi. She's a former Apprentice star. She's a Muslim commentator. She was here with me just a little while ago, and she made some very interesting insights. Have a look.
First of all, I would like to share my condolences with the Jewish community, and I feel as if, of course, I don't speak for all the Muslims in this country, but I feel as if I need to apologise on behalf of the Muslims in this country. I think we've let the Jewish community down, and sadly it felt as if we were waiting for something going to happen. That something's going to happen, and it has now. But I'm absolutely disgusted, and I feel a lot of people from my faith can do way more. They're sitting on their butts doing nothing, and I mean, I'm absolutely shocked, and I'm almost speechless, because it's absolutely shocking. And there was a protest that happened apparently yesterday as well.
Last night, yeah.
That is so disgusting. I mean, this is the kind of thing. I mean, it looked as if they're celebrating, right? Yeah. And these weren't just Muslims; these were the pro-Palestinian people. And sadly, a lot of people have conflated Judaism with Zionism, and they see. Some people see Jewish people as a target, a hit piece. So, yeah, it's absolutely shocking, and I'm just speechless. I feel the extremists have been emboldened over the years, and I don't see the government seriously trying to tackle extremism. How many are on the terror watch list? Why are there organisations that the Arab countries have deemed terrorist organisations, but we haven't? I mean, all of this doesn't make sense. So for anyone from the government to come out and say that we're taking this seriously, X, Y, Z, it just sounds as if I don't believe it. It's just very disgusting. It's not reassuring at all. And I feel really sad for the Jewish community because they are a religious minority, not just in the UK but globally, whereas I appreciate the Muslims will say that they are also a religious minority, yes, but not globally. We are actually a religious majority, and I do feel the peaceful, moderate Muslims, wherever they are, they should be speaking up way more, and they don't. And it's just very disappointing. And sadly, a lot of these Muslim, especially people from my heritage, the Pakistani heritage, these influencers or politicians, they come out and they'll say, yes, it's really sad what happened, but we blame what's happening in the Middle East. No, as soon as you start blaming what's happening in the Middle East, you're giving these extremists an excuse and saying, do you know what, it's justified because what's happening in the Middle East is bad, so therefore it's okay. And this shows their true intent, I feel. The Muslim Council of Britain is an organisation that I don't know what they're good for. I don't know what they do, what's their function, what do they actually do? And I've seen some of the posts that these people have and other organisations, and I don't believe them. It's all wishy-washy condolences, oh, this is bad what happened, and it's just
they
like...
They don't really mean it.
It doesn't, it doesn't sadly appear as if they do, and that's why we need more effort, I feel. And I appreciate it's very early days, this happened yesterday only, and more information will come out, and people usually are hesitant to talk about topics, because as more information will come to life, of course, that may give us more, more to discuss from different viewpoints. However, I feel that